John, not sure if
Okay.
you see my screen.
Yep, I can. The time is now 5:35 PM and I am calling to order the South End Landmark District Commission, May 5th, 2026 public hearing. Commissioners present are Commissioner Hunt, Commissioner Reedy, Commissioner DeBoard, Commissioner Sanborn, Commissioner Freeman. Have I gotten everybody? Is Felicia on?
Felicia's not on. It's
Okay.
Commissioner Hunt, Reedy, DeBoard, Sanborn, Freeman,
Yep.
and Amadeo.
Okay, that's what I read. And of course, myself. Today, the commission will be holding a public hearing to review applications in accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, extending the suspension of these provisions until June 30th, 2027. We are conducting this meeting online. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the South End Landmark District Commission, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. This hearing is being recorded. All further conversations between commissioners should be audible to the public in attendance until the hearing has adjourned. Are there any media or elected officials currently present? If so, please raise your hand using the Zoom meeting platform and state your name, title, and affiliation. Sarah, do we have anybody from the media on board? Is Sarah with us?
Yes.
Yep. Hi, Sarah.
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, great. We'll carry on. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. We will repeat these instructions throughout the hearing. And the agenda tonight is the ratification of the April 7th meeting minutes. We'll have design review followed by administrative review. We have an advisory review as well, and then staff updates before adjournment. So we will go to ratification of the April 7th meeting minutes. And would somebody like to?
Yeah, I move that we
move?
ratify the minutes.
Okay. Looking for a second.
Second.
Okay, that was Peter, I think. So, yep. So we'll go to a vote. Catherine,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and the chair votes with the motion, so the motion carries. And we go now into design review. And the first item on design review is 131 Dartmouth Street. The proposed work is to remove an existing awning and replace with an awning titled Fedex Office, install new non-illuminated wall signs, install new vinyl signage at front entry door titled Fedex Office, install a new non-illuminated blade sign. This is continued from the April 7th hearing. And is the applicant here?
Hi, I am. My name is Marie Marcia. My video won't go on. It said it was disabled by the host. So,
You should be able to turn on your camera if you wish.
okay, thank you.
Well, I'm just going to read our staff comments and recommendation into the record. So this application was reviewed at the April 7th hearing, but was continued to allow staff additional time to research and locate a master signage plan for 131 Dartmouth. Unfortunately, we have not been able to locate a master signage plan in our records. We also contacted Arrow Street Incorporated, the architects for the building, and they stated they do not have a master signage plan on file for 131 Dartmouth. Staff has corresponded with the applicant and requested that the proposed blade sign be omitted from the project. However, the applicant opted to move forward to present the project as submitted to the commission. Staff recommends that this application be approved with the proviso that the purple panels on the side and the blade sign be eliminated from the proposal. Installing purple panels on the existing bay windows would be inconsistent with the bay window design elsewhere on the building. The blade sign as proposed is excessive when added to the proposed signage. Marie, feel free to start.
I am here, and I'm sorry, I don't know what happened to my video. So, hi, my name is Marie Mercier. I'm here with for sign design for my client for FedEx. So, as Sarah just said, I guess the reason why we came back is because you were looking for a master architect plan. My client wanted, I think we were approved at the last meeting to move ahead for the awning, which I received the paperwork and is filing for the permit on that. But we still would like to talk over the rest of the signage that the client is looking for. Let's see. I don't know if you can scroll through.
Yep, Marie, so I'm in charge of the presentation, so just feel free to let me know if you want to move to the next slide within the process,
Yeah,
which I
you
will
can
do.
move on to where it shows the signage. All right, so the awning was approved the last meeting, so we were all set with that. To the next one, please. Nope, that's still the awning. Still the awning. All right, so this is just graphics to go on the front door, which will be underneath the awning. Just showing FedEx on the door. The blue isn't there. The blue's just representing the glass. It's just the white Fed and the orange EX with office. So that they would still like to put on their front door. Next screen. And then we'll move ahead to the following one, but this would be, so the print and ship, and I believe there's another one that says, hold on a second, I apologize. Oh, signs and graphics would be the purple, kind of like a sign pan that we would put in the middle of each bay window, one on each side. And these would be fastened with, to the mullions on we would do it on the inset to the mullions of the window there. They are also looking, as we spoke last time, for the purple vinyl to go on each side to kind of continue the wrap. After going out to this property, yes, it was glass. I was unaware when we had spoke the last time. And someone had mentioned if we can install it on the interior, which I would have been okay with, but there is no way to access the inside of the glass on this window because it's blocked out and from the floor and the ceiling, and there's no access panel there. The access panel that is, well, there's a small one. It's only like an electrical 6x6, probably about that size, entry point. So there'd be no way that I can put the vinyl on the inside. So our client is still looking to do the vinyl, but on the exterior side of the window on both of the bays. And then in speaking, I guess, the blade sign, we wouldn't be able to do, listening to the verbiage that was just read, which I can go back and let my client know, but that was the other reason why I'm coming to the meeting.
It's not that it wasn't allowed. I did, my comment was essentially that it was excessive in regards to all of the signage, the blade sign.
Okay. So they would like to, I'm here just representing them. They would like to look at the blade sign, but of course I know it depends on what the committee decides.
Right. So, is that it, Marie?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Is that the end of your presentation?
Yes, I'm sorry. That was the rest of the signage that we had to go over. Correct. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, that's okay. So I'm gonna ask commissioners if you have any further questions. We did review this pretty at length last month, but I'm not sure if everybody was here last month. So if there are anybody with questions, please let me know.
So
Chris?
I do have some questions just real quickly. So it was a suggestion that we not put the blade sign, and you were also suggesting not to finish the wraparound on the two signs that say print and copy and the
Right.
signs. To not put those purple squares on either side in that space. That was the suggestion, I believe.
Yes.
So, well, that's the staff comments.
Okay, all right.
And that was also discussed by commissioners last month.
Yeah, I was not in on it.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions before we go to comments? If not, I'll just go right to comments. So, John, why don't you start with comments? You're good at wrapping things up.
So I think 99% sure that there was a signage master plan.
Mhm.
And I suspect that the other retail entities in the building adhered to it. And there's no other blade sign on the building until you get down to the major entrance, which is a difference. So I think, given the staff comments, which I trust completely about the amount of signage, and that we should, I would say to not approve the blade sign. Of course, if anybody has trouble finding FedEx, they can always come back. I don't think that'll happen.
Okay, what about the purple panels flanking the bay window signs?
There's no other place on the building that I'm aware of in similar bay that has the side panels. I know the existing tenant there has the panel in the middle. I think we could allow that to continue, but I would say not on the sides.
Okay. Great, thank you, John. Catherine, any comments?
Just agree with John. He's correct. There are no other instances of that along the building. So despite not having that master plan to actually show tonight, John is correct. These other tenants or retail concerns are abiding by that. So we need to be consistent.
Great. Chris, any thoughts?
So I
there?
have a question and a comment. There are panes of glass on the sides of those two bay windows where they want to put the vinyl purple squares,
Yes,
but it's not accessible from the inside. So,
it would be on the outside, correct?
okay. It may not be consistent with the other buildings, but I think the purple, like, to me, it reads like it could be a granite sill all the way across, consistent material across, but that's my comment on that it doesn't bother me at all. It just makes it more consistent in my mind.
Okay. And Peter.
I agree with John and Catherine's comments completely.
And same, I agree with John and Catherine's, and so I think we're ready for a motion. If anybody would like to offer one.
Mr. Chair, can I just, are we all set? Are we okay to do the vinyl on the door? The small FedEx vinyl?
That's a
on
good
the door?
question. I don't think anybody's objected to it. Any comments from anyone for the vinyl on the door?
That
I'm
right there.
fine with
FedEx
it.
office, I think that's fine.
I think it's fine.
Yep.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks for trying to clarify that, Marie.
Thank you.
So, do we have a motion?
I'll
What should the
I'll
motion
move
be
that-
to?
John, go ahead.
No, yeah, Peter, if you know what the motion should be, go ahead.
I'm not sure I do, but I'll try. I move that we approve the application, except for the following items that should be deleted from it. And that would be the blade sign that the applicant has requested, and the purple vinyl adhesive on the four of them on the outer sides of the two bays. So there'd be a total of four purple vinyl adhesive materials or any opaque material.
Okay, that's a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second. John.
Okay. Yeah, yep, that was John Freeman. So I think we go to public comment before a vote. So members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application discussions. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you, excuse me 1 second. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at southendldc@boston.gov. And Sarah, do we have anybody raising their hand, or did you get any written comments?
We did not receive any written public comments, and I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, then we'll go right to a vote. Catherine,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
and the chair votes with the motion, so the motion carries. So thank you, Marie.
Thank you.
And you can work with staff moving forward on the approval.
Great. Thank you so much. Have a great.
You too. Bye. We'll go to the next item on design review, which is 503 SHAWMUT Ave. And the proposed work is to expand dormers at the rear.
Yep, and before I make the project applicant able to share their screen and unmute themselves, the staff comment is that this application was denied without prejudice at the March 3rd, 2026 hearing. Commissioner Amadeo and Freeman discussed the design with the applicant and recommended the following: that the space between the 3 windows shall not be glass, it shall be a solid wall, and it shall also be recessed back from the 2 flanking windows. The applicant has since revised the application and to reflect these recommendations. The staff recommendation is approval with the following provisos: applicant to provide staff with shop drawings of the proposed windows to be used and provide the shingle materials to be used at the roof.
Okay, thank you very much, Jackie.
Of course. And then Jeffrey, I am making you co-host, so you should be able to unmute, share your, turn on your camera and share your screen if you wish.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, excellent. So just to review, this is 503 SHAWMUT Avenue. It's obviously on SHAWMUT Avenue between Springfield and Worcester. It's in the middle of the block. Behind the building is the Hurley School. This is a site section through the building. It does not alter, taken through the center of the dormer. That part does not alter through the center of the dormer. This is a fixed photograph from the Hurley parking lot, looking at our building, which is in the middle there with the 2 dormers on it. The one on the left is an addition. The one in the middle, it appears to be original, although the trim has been replaced and it's in very difficult condition from a construction standpoint. There we are zooming in on those 2 dormers. This was our proposal last time, and I know that we just reviewed it, but we took into consideration some very specific recommendations, which is that the central dormer be replicated as it is presently, and the subservient dormers be set back 6 inches from that central dormer, and the 2 panels between the 3 dormers be set back another 6 inches. So we very carefully measured the central dormer. Its face sits 7 1/4 inches back from the dominant face of the building below. This is a section through the subordinate dormer. You put it back 6 inches. This is a section through the panels between the dormers. We put those back a foot and another 6 inches. It's a section at the mansard on the left and the right. This is an image of those proposed changes. And this is the way it is now. I'll zoom back. That's it. So that's the existing rear elevation. That's the elevation that we're proposing. And that's it.
Okay. That's terrific, Jeffrey. Thank you very much. I'd like to find out if commissioners have any questions. John, since we were most vocal about it last time, why don't you go first with any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, great. Peter, any questions?
Yes, I do. Could we go to the rendering, sort of a angular view of the rendering? So will there be, are you intending to have fascia boards on the sides of the dormers?
Yes.
Are they shown here? Am I not?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, they're exactly the same dimension as the dormer as it exists now. See, all three dormers share the same size fascia boards.
Okay.
Is that facial wood or is that like a copper? Where's
it's so that's what exists.
Right.
That's what we're proposing. If it's wood now, it'll be wood.
okay?
Peter, did you get your question answered?
Can we go to the existing condition, please?
Oops, sorry.
So there is a fascia currently on what we think is the original dormer that is below the cornice of the dormer itself, which is dimensioned about the same size as the trim board on the upper sash. I don't see that on the rendering. That's what I was asking about. If there would be.
Oh, I see what you mean. You're exactly right. I'm happy to add that.
Okay. That's all, John. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Chris, did you have any other questions?
I do have a question. I'm always talking about the Victorian molding because it actually keeps the roof drip line away from the building. And while I like this, the square on the side because it gives dominance to the middle of the original dormer, is there anything to keep that drip away from the, so it doesn't drip down the front of the windows and the sides? Is there any anything that keeps it away from the building, like the crown molding keeps it, 3 inches away when you put it up there, whatever. And is there anything like that on the square dormer? Maybe even a square board to pull out the drip edge a little further. Just
So that the water runs back into the sides and down the
Okay.
two mansards.
Okay.
Catherine, any questions?
Yes, Juan, thank you. Jeffrey, forgive me if I missed it, but the material that separates each dormer, originally you were proposing glass, correct?
That's right.
And what is it now?
It's wood.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay. And so now we'll go into comments. John, do you have comments?
I think that Jeffrey and the team have done exactly what we asked. I think this is consistent with other dormer approvals that and applications that we've approved. And I think it looks very nice.
Okay. Peter, any comments?
Only that I'd like to see the addition of the fascia board, which the applicant has indicated they're willing to add. So,
Okay, great. Chris, any comments?
I think this is very sharp. I think it's going to be the best three dormer extension that there is in the South End. Nice job, Jeff.
Great. Catherine, any comments?
Agree, looks excellent, nicely done.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I agree with my fellow commissioners, including Peter's comment about adding the missing fascia board on the sides. Great. I think we're ready for a motion.
I move to approve the application as submitted.
I second that.
Or don't you want to put the
okay.
fascia boards?
Yeah, amendment request to include
amendment.
additional fascia boards.
Yeah,
Okay,
Also, may I make an amendment?
yeah, go ahead.
The staff comments request that there be submission of shop drawings, which would be typical, and also submission of the roofing material, I think the shingle material. So I'm that should be added, proposing that that be added to the motion.
done.
Okay, that amendment was accepted. Who seconded? I can't remember.
Peter.
I did, Chris.
Oh, Chris, I'm sorry.
Chris, and do you accept the amendments, Chris?
I accept the amendment.
Okay, great. Then we'll be ready for public comment before a vote. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at southendldc@boston.gov. And Sarah, any written public comment or hands raised by the public?
We did not receive any written public comment, and I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, then we'll go right to a vote. Catherine,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Peter,
aye.
John,
Aye.
and the chair votes with the motion, so the motion carries. Okay, thank you very much, Jeffrey, and thank you very much for being so responsive.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
terrific.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to look great.
Mm.
So we'll go to the next application, which is 379 SHAWMUT Avenue. The proposed work is to create a new shed dormer addition at the rear.
And before the project representative raises their hand, and I'll be looking out for them, I just wanted to add our staff recommendation and staff comment. So this particular scope that we're looking at is at the rear. Staff conducted a site visit to assess visibility and found that the dormer is not visible from San Juan Street and only minimally visible when standing at a specific spot on West Dedham Street. Staff recommends approval as submitted. Staff assessed that the dormer alteration at the rear is minimally visible from a public way and was only visible when standing at a specific spot, again, on West Dedham Street. So Marc Sullivan is the project representative. And Marc, I have made you co-host, so you should be able to unmute yourself and share your screen if you wish.
Thank you.
And Marc,
My name is.
Oh, go ahead, Marc.
Oh, sorry to interrupt.
No, my bad. You carry on.
Sorry. My name is Marc Sullivan with Chu and Company Architects, here with the owner, Lysian Wu. I'm going to share my screen now. And can everyone see that all right?
It's coming up. Not up yet. There it is.
So this project will cover everything that we're proposing to do here, but it stems from the fact that the existing roof on the property has some serious leaking issues. And what we're proposing to do is essentially recreate the entire front along SHAWMUT here.
Marc, I'm gonna have to interrupt you very quickly. The front scope of work is actually placed on administrative review. So that scope of work that's happening at the rear are all in-kind replacements as submitted by your team. So what we're gonna be focusing for the sake of time is going to be the proposed roof dormer alteration at the rear.
Sure thing. I'll skip a couple of slides.
Thank you.
Take care of that. So this is the property right here. The visible portion from the public street is on West Dedham Street. through the garden area right here. We are proposing a shed dormer on the back that matches very similar to the three properties that are next to us down the road, SHAWMUT Ave, and to the left when looking from the rear. This is a view from the backside here, again, 379 being here. There is one small existing gable dormer that we're looking to replace with this shed dormer. And the reason being, right now, currently, there is a bedroom and bathroom area that essentially are not usable because of the eave space coming into the space. So again, we're looking to create a shed dormer that matches in kind with these dormers next to. The public road, West Dedham, is the view from the public street, which again, you can see through this Unity Tower Gardens area, but very, very slightly. I'll get to it in a moment. You can see the exact view. I'm just going to skip.
I also just, while you're trying to find that section, I'm going to share staff's visibility as well. Hopefully everyone can see my screen now right here. So again, echoing what Marc was saying, we only could see it at a very focalized point on West Dedham Street. And it's all the way at the rear right here. You see this sort of dormer right here. And the shed dormer is going to bring it forward. So again, we wanted to bring it to the commission for full review. And then Marc, if you could reshare your screen and continue, I apologize. I just wanted to include that image for the commissioners to understand.
Yeah, no problem at all. So this is existing views of the rear here. Again, this is that existing gable dormer. As we can see to the left, we are matching what they are doing to the left for the three properties with a new standing seam copper shed dormer. We are looking to replace the existing roof material as that shingle or asphalt shingle in kind. I'm going to skip the front portion there. Just go to the rear. Here we can see those three properties. Again, standing seam copper matching the property here. This is our property to the right. So this is the existing again, and then this is showing what we are proposing. So the new shed dormer with windows that are centered within the bedroom and bathroom space, again, to create more light and to also give actual usability to the spaces that are now more than 50% within the eave space. These are just the floor plans, the existing floor plan here showing the bedroom, bathroom, and again, the proposed plan over here with those window locations. This is the view as Jacqueline provided to us that the staff member saw. So this is the new view, which we actually did a mock-up here that you can kind of barely see in the corner, but it's in line with these existing shed dormers, and again, very slightly visible from West Dedham. And again, that mock-up seen on the existing building on the rear as well.
Also, just want to point out for the commissioners to understand that these photos that are taken that we're seeing right now is actually a private parking lot. So staff didn't take photos, nor did we go to this area because this wouldn't fall under our visibility and purview. So.
Thank you, Jackie.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie.
And that concludes our presentation, but we'd be happy to answer any questions or go further into detail.
Before I ask for questions from fellow commissioners, as long as you got this picture up, can you remind me, is your proposal to have the shed dormer the full width of the building?
It is.
Okay.
With the exception to the one property to the left that you're seeing here, all of those other shed dormers do go full length of each property.
Okay. And I'm just curious, is the middle window in your proposed shed dormer expansion located in the same place where the dormer window is?
Yeah, so the window is located in that same location, but obviously the roof and the sidewalls are.
Sure. Got it. Okay. I will now ask fellow commissioners questions. Catherine.
Just a quick one. Marc, does the new dormer impact that chimney at all?
So we are, let me scroll. So we are going up to the chimney, but we're essentially going around it. So we are keeping the chimney as is, repointing obviously the brickwork and making sure that it's up to safety standards, but not impacting it in terms of removing anything.
Got it. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, Chris, any questions?
Questions?
Peter, any questions?
No, thank you.
John, any
Nope.
questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, then we'll go right to comments. Catherine, any comments?
No, thank you.
Okay, Chris, comments?
My comments are, I love this building. I love that curb. I think it's the only one in the south end. So I'm glad to see that it's being tended to correctly. And good job on the proposal. Thank you.
Yeah. Peter, any comments? Did I
No.
already ask you? Okay,
Nope.
nope. And John, any comments?
I think that the only relevance here is the visibility, and I agree completely with the staff comments.
Yeah. And I concur with the staff comments as well. So I'm ready for us to go to a motion.
I move to approve the application as submitted.
I second that.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and it's been seconded. Shall we go to public comment then?
Yes, let me reshare my screen.
Mhm.
Mm.
Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at southendldc@boston.gov. And Sarah, is anyone raising their hands, or did we receive any written public comment?
We did not receive any written public comment, and I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, great. Then we'll go right to a vote. Catherine,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and the chair votes with the motion, so the motion carries. And I also just want to echo Chris's comment. The piano curve on the front of the building is unique to the south end. It's the only building I'm aware of with that detail. And it's there to resolve the differing setbacks between the buildings on either side of it. And it's very clever architectural move. And I'm so glad that the building is in good hands for good stewardship. Thank you very much.
Here, here.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Yeah. So we'll go on to the next application then. The next application is 139 West Canton Street. The proposed work is at the roof, install a new roof deck with skylight access and metal railing. At the front, install a new 2x2 wood window on the 4th floor and install a new 2/2 wood window at the garden level window well. And there are additional items under administrative review, which the applicant doesn't need to present to us.
And so Joseph Kennard, I think, will be presenting for the applicant. And then Steve, I think, is also here. I think that's the right Steve.
Yeah, maybe if they could raise their hands, if the project representatives can raise their hand using the Zoom button. So we can properly identify.
In the meantime, I can read my staff comment. So staff conducted a site visit to assess the visibility of the proposed roof deck and railing. It was determined that the rear portion of the deck and railing is visible from both Montgomery and Dartmouth Street. The applicant informed staff that the rear guardrail location was set based on the required stair access landing clearances. Therefore, relocating it would render the roof deck inaccessible. Please note that the applicant intends to submit a separate design review application for rooftop mechanical equipment. Mechanical equipment will not be reviewed as part of this application. Staff has corresponded with the applicant and requested that the proposed mutton dimensions be 7/8 of an inch. However, the applicant opted to proceed with the 5/8 mutton bar as submitted. Staff recommends that this application be approved with the provisos that 1, The proposed roof deck and railing be set back to align with the landing and staircase. 2, that the applicant submit a design review application for the future rooftop mechanical equipment, and that the proposed mountain dimensions be 7/8 of an inch. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sarah. So who will be presenting?
Right, Joseph Kennard here.
Okay.
Joseph, just to make sure, are there any other project representatives that need to be?
Steven Stefanoff should be here as well, the project architect. Pedro Ojeda, owner of the property, is here as well. And Matthew Eckel from Fletcher Tilton Attorneys should also be here.
Great, they've all been made co-hosts, so they should be able to unmute themselves and share their camera.
Yep, and those are just photos of that we took during our site visit. I don't know, Jack, if you can like zoom in. It was kind of hard to see it from this angle from the photo, but we took this photo in the rear at the top. Here. That one across.
Is that picture from Dartmouth Street?
Yes. Yes. And then the next photo will be from Montgomery.
Mhm.
And that little thing sticking out was the mock-up right here. Yep.
Ah, okay.
And that's from Montgomery Street.
What does that stick represent within their design?
I believe that was their railing,
And does it go to the right of the stick or the left of the stick?
the left.
Okay.
Can I present and I could show where that is? Because that top of stick is actually not the top of railing. That was just mounted, the tape. If you saw the tape, that would be top of railing, which you're not able to see there.
Okay,
Oh, then Joseph, please
Yeah,
carry
please.
on.
Okay. So I just select share here. Okay, hopefully you're seeing the first page of our submittal.
Yes.
So I don't know if any of you recognize this property. The homeowner had submitted previously, not quite a year ago, for approval on replacing windows on the front. Since then, he's engaged us and we've gone further. Sorry, I'm looking over there. I should be looking over here. We've gone further with the project for interior renovations and exterior renovations. So you'll see in the front elevation, the upper window was bricked in. And we're going to be replacing that with a matching window unit to coincide with the other ones that were approved. And then down in the window well, which is actually below grade, we're also replacing a window there. It's below this metal grate on the right, so it's not visible. We're also restoring the brickwork and the stone lintels and sills.
If that's under administrative review, you don't need to go through that with us.
Okay, skip this.
Mm-hmm. I think it was the windows and the roof deck, essentially.
So I showed you the windows. Let me see if I can find the screen where I had the roof deck, pictures from the roof deck. So in that picture, you were seeing, I believe, this top left post here. And the tape is down about a foot from those posts. The other thing to note is that this yellow line represents the tape that we put up. But in reality, that back corner that you're seeing, we're actually back another 18 inches, 2 feet, and we're down about 21 inches for the access hatch coming out. So it'll actually be back and down for that one little spot that you can see. For simplicity of the mock-up, we just created a big triangle.
Rectangle.
Thank you. I have to catch up on my terms, my architectural terms. So that's the footprint of the roof deck. You can see it set back from the back and set back from the front, and it wasn't visible from the front and barely visible from the back. I had this photo as well. And I also had a photo of what else is going on. Just this is the same tree as that last photo. We're up in this zone. I think you're seeing right where my hand is. This is the top of the post. And then right turning the corner, you can see other roof decks up there from that same viewpoint.
They'll have their day in court. The other roof decks. Okay, so was there anything else, Joseph, that you want to present as part of this?
I do not believe so. I answered any questions.
Yep. So commissioners will have questions and then they'll comment, and then we'll get public comment before we go to a vote. So Catherine, any questions?
No, thank you.
Peter, any questions?
Yes. Why have you not included a plan for the mechanicals with this plan?
It's still being worked up by the mechanical engineer. We're in technical drawings right now. And so we had to say that once we know how many there are and where they are, we will resubmit them.
Is there any chance that that is going to either have a visibility concern of ours or conflict with your deck plan?
We're working to make it not do either of those. We know that we would not make them visible on the front at all. Whether they're visible on the back yet, I can't tell you because I don't know what the units are yet. We can certainly mock them up as well. And as we're working with the engineer, we're working with them to locate them discreetly.
Thank you.
Okay. Chris, any questions?
I do have a question. I'm looking at the front elevation that's on the screen right now, and it shows a very visible roof deck rail from the front of the building. Now, I'm assuming that that's not the perspective that you would see from the street.
No, this is a flat elevation. Let me give you the perspective from the street. All right. Oh, that's the shots from above. We're right over here at the top of this tree, just below that lamppost. And the mock-up is
with it. I just didn't. I'm sure it's set back far enough if the staff has gone out to see it from side by side that it should be fine.
I thought I'd show you another view. This is another view with our building being right here, and you cannot see it.
Okay. Thank you. I've lost track of who I've asked and who I haven't. John, questions?
A couple of questions. So I have questions about the windows. What two windows are we reviewing? And it's the blind replacement. I see.
At the top.
Yeah, and that was not original.
There was nothing there.
Okay. I mean, they did do blind windows in the Victorian era. I wouldn't think that that would be one, but I just want to make sure. And there was something in the staff comments about 1/2 inch muntins, but in your presentation that we had ahead of time, what you have circled is the Marvin Ultimate double hung window with the 7/8 inch SDL, and I think that's approvable. Is there something that I don't know?
No, I think what I heard was that we requested they be the 5/8 inch one, the narrower one, because we found on buildings like this in the south end that they are actually quite narrow. And we thought the 5/8 was more appropriate than the 7/8, which gets to be a little chunky and a little wider. We will do whatever you guys suggest, but in our experience, we've gone with this 5/8 inch muntin in the past.
In our experience in commission, having looked at thousands of historic windows, a 7/8 inch muntin was pretty much the standard with the putty profile, and that's what you have, or someone has circled here, or squared, as the case may be.
Okay.
Which is the other window?
So on this facade, you're seeing the blank one at the top.
Yeah.
If you go straight down,
Oh,
you
the one
see
underground?
it's the bottom one here is this one you're seeing, and then we're actually down underground here. Yep, that's the other
I
one.
think if that's out of view, I don't think we care.
You
Are
can't
you
see
planning
it.
to remove the grade or make any other changes to the garden?
We're restoring the brickwork here, which I guess is administrative. We're gonna salvage it and put it back because it's all kind of,
Yeah, okay.
heaving. And then we're leaving that curb, and then we're gonna restore that iron grate.
Does this window have to serve as an egress window?
It does not.
Okay, then you're good. I think we're
Mhm.
okay with that. I didn't understand everything about the deck views. If my fellow commissioners are all okay with that, I'll skip those questions. So I'm done.
Yeah, I've got a few questions. Have I asked everybody else questions?
Before you go, John, I was just curious. I saw up in one of those upper windows. It looks like they're 6/6. Is that remaining? One of the windows? The one right above the door, or the one two above the door? Go forward again to the facade. Is that 6/6?
Yeah,
Over
right.
6.
That was replaced at some other point in time. It wasn't an original window. And then when the homeowner went to the commission previously, he talked about restoring them to their original 2/2. So that's what you're seeing here.
Yeah.
And those were previously approved.
Yeah, okay. That's fine. Thank you.
Great.
And they'll be implemented during construction. We're trying to wrap it all into one construction project.
Joseph, can you go to the floor plan of the roof deck, please? Which was toward the end, I think, of your presentation. Yeah, there. Could you describe how you get out of the unit onto the roof deck?
There is, yeah. Let me see, did I have the floor plans in here? No,
I don't really need to see the floor plan.
that's
Just on
fine.
the roof deck.
So the stairs come up here
Mm-hmm.
and you land here.
Okay.
And then you have to go up a couple more steps to get to here. The roof is a little bit steeply pitched. So we got it as low as we could at this point, and then it went straight. But we needed to drop it down here to make the stairs work because that's where the stair core goes down the house. So we had to drop it there and then step up to get to this elevation, which is as low as we can put it up here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I think that is, thank you, that was helpful. I'm not quite sure I understand the staff recommendation for the railing. Sarah or Jackie, could you repeat that now that we have a floor plan on the screen?
Yeah, so the staff comment, sorry, let me just find it. So we recommended pushing the proposed roof deck and railing back to align with the landing and the staircase. So kind of where
You mean the one in the front?
and the one in the rear. in the rear.
I mean, right, but
The forward one, the
Yeah.
forward rail to move back to align with the rail that's already set back. Is that what you mean, Jackie
Yeah, so,
or Sarah?
yeah, so where like
Sarah.
the planter is, pushing it
Mhm.
to where it aligns with the landing and the stair. Yep,
Right there.
yes.
and
Okay,
So
That
is,
the
would,
planters would go here.
well, obviously they couldn't.
On
no,
the stairs.
Yeah, you just wouldn't have planners. That's the staff recommendation, was to just to remove the planners there and create an egress. Or just create a walkway there.
yeah, you can't have the planters there. Mhm.
Is that part of railing visible? I thought we
No.
just saw the pictures that it's not.
No. The one you were kind of seeing was over here, barely seeing.
Mhm.
And that was the post, and this is lower even.
Right.
And this is hidden behind a chimney. And your view from that side was coming this way.
Mhm. So, I think we're ready to go into comments, and I'm gonna actually break protocol and comment first, because I have a suggestion. It has to do with the railing. And while the railing itself might not be visible, I think it is worth pushing that forward railing farther back in order to accommodate the possible location of mechanicals on the roof without them, and giving them a shot at not being visible. Whereas the forward portion of the railing would require the mechanicals. Oh, is that where you're planning on putting the mechanicals?
It's one thing that we are talking about is there. And the other thing with back here, why I say we don't know what the units are. I'm gonna do a really rough sketch because this is a mouse and a pencil. The roof slopes from down here to up here pretty significantly. Our deck is here, like this,
Mm-hmm.
with the railing that couldn't be seen. So we're hoping, the mechanicals are sitting down there. That's what I need to verify when I can have the equipment and I know the height, because they're going to sit down on the actual roof, and hopefully take them out of view. Other spots that we are considering is right there. I'm not going to put them here. I don't know if they'd even be visible there, but
Right. Yep. I personally am still skeptical that all the mechanicals can be placed in a place where we won't see them with the current deck configuration. So I would support the staff comment to push that forward railing back to align with the setback railing. And that's my only comment. So I will now go to any other commissioner for comments. John?
So that makes sense to me, but I think I would propose it this way. Since they have to come back with mechanical anyway, let's be conservative, which is our responsibility, and say that we'll approve the railing in the position B, as you'd call it today. And if when they come back with the mechanical and the whatever screening or whatever other way of doing that, then they could and can show us that that railing will not be visible and the mechanical will not be visible, we can visit this again. So as to the windows, they seem fine to me. The Marvin Ultimate with the 7/8 inch is approved all over the South End and many other historic districts. So I would say that as a proviso, we should ask for the 7/8 inch button, but everything else in the windows is fine with me. And that applies only to the visible window. I don't think we really have purview over the below grade window.
That's great. John, I think that's a creative and also thoughtful recommendation.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
so John, you're saying that if they if they are able to put the mechanicals, what are the mechanicals? Do you know it is like 3 heat pumps or
they're heat pumps, correct?
a 3 heat pump? So if we were to if they were able to put the heat pumps between those two chimneys, would we go revisit putting the deck back where it was?
That was John's suggestion, Chris.
Okay,
Right.
perfect.
Or
Bob-
anywhere else. Maybe they
Or
could put it
anywhere
under
else
the deck.
not visible.
Sure.
Mhm.
Long before sitting on this commission, built a deck on Dartmouth Street that had the same viewpoints from one spot on Montgomery Street, one spot on Dartmouth Street, and you had to stand on point X to be able to see it. I think it's a little bit broader on this, what can be seen, but we can't see anything anyway, but I'm just saying, good job on the configuration and making it not being able to be seen.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, Peter, any comments?
Yes, appears to be a generously sized deck, so which is fine. But personally, I'm reluctant to approve this deck plan until we have a plan for the mechanicals to guarantee that there will be no or limited visibility. I mean, what if it turns out that the mechanicals need to be on the opposite side by the other party wall adjacent to the hatch? So I would be very reluctant to approve this plan until we know what the mechanicals plan is.
Okay. Catherine,
Well, I agree with Peter, but I guess perhaps I didn't hear John correctly. I thought he was saying that they would come back once the mechanical location was known. Maybe
well,
he didn't say that.
John did say that, but to approve the deck with the configuration modified to show the orange line that's drawn there, slightly wiggly, moving the forward rail back to align with the setback rail. And that if the mechanicals were to be located in a spot that was not visible, but would allow for the deck to be returned to the original proposed configuration, we could revisit that. But it wasn't to hold back on approving a roof deck until we got the mechanicals.
I see. Well, it's a little complicated. I mean, kind of agree with Peter. Yeah.
I would say that's a significant differential. Because I think if the homeowner knew that they might not get a roof deck,
Nobody has said that
No,
yet.
nobody is saying that.
No.
Okay.
I guess my feeling about it is there's so many options for the mechanical. I can think of probably two or three more other than what Joseph has sketched. I'm sure that there is a configuration that will allow them to be hidden. But what they're asking for is this roof deck, and what the staff has proposed is this small cutback as a way to just be conservative about it. And I think we err on the side of being conservative. We can approve it like this. That way, if they decide not to change the mechanical, or something else comes up where they don't need rooftop units at all, they have their roof deck, and they can always come back and ask for the extra 2 feet. I mean, if you think of it this way, if mechanical hadn't even been mentioned, we see lots of roof decks without mechanical, and then they came back in another month and said, we just realized we need a mechanical system. We'd see it as 2 applications, and that's all we're saying.
Agreed, John. They're not going to work against their best self-interests in building a deck and then choosing mechanicals that aren't going to go with the deck that they've asked for. So
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So who hasn't commented? Anybody not commented yet? And I concur with John's comments, including on the windows as well. So
John,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to catch you before we moved on. For the windows, since I know you're a stickler for the windows, I took a picture of the size of the muttons of the ones that we're restoring, and those are the 5/8. Would you want us to keep them consistent with the windows that we're installing Marvin's on? Or would you like us to keep the restored windows 5/8, which is what we're doing, and then buy the new ones with the larger buttons, if that makes sense?
I think,
And I can show you a picture of that if you.
I think our standard is 7/8, and I don't know if there's a window in there with 5/8 muttons. I wonder about how that window, what the
Okay.
real history of it is, but you can submit that to staff. I'm not sure I can really tell from a photograph on a computer screen on a Zoom call.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Pedro, are you saying that we previously approved 5/8 for your other replacement windows?
Joe, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we're happy to do whatever the board wants, by the way. I was just wanted to make sure that
Right.
we were.
I think what
talking about the
Pedro
right
was saying
size.
that we'd have 7/8 on all the new windows and 5/8 on all the restored windows.
Well, if you're
Oh,
Yes.
they're existing windows that you're restoring. Okay, understood.
We're restoring 6 or 7 of windows. Yeah.
So if you can show that to staff and prove that the original windows in this building were built, I mean, who knows, maybe that homeowner at that time, this was something very important to them. All those windows were hand built. I suppose they could have cut them down or something. But I would just, I'll remand that to staff. But
Thank you.
typically, or more than typically, I mean, I've never seen a Victorian era window with muttons that thin. It wouldn't hold the glass on a 2/2.
If you're saying, yeah, just to chime in, so if that's going to be remanded to staff, just getting ahead of the gun, a couple things we're going to have to see is probably images of the jam liners, the material, the glass. If you're saying it's original, we would have to see evidence of that for us to proceed.
Also, I have a lot of respect for Old Bostonian. I see the name there. Their opinion would be important.
Yeah, you would have to demonstrate that those windows you want to emulate are indeed original.
I hear what you're saying. And if they are original and being restored at 5/8, then we go with the 5/8 on the new ones. If the originals are 7/8, then we go with 7/8 on the new ones, basically.
If the windows you're restoring are not originals, then we would not use them as a model.
No, that's a good point.
Joe, can I jump in for 1 minute? I just
pretty
to clarify.
original.
We can't have a free-for-all. Raise your hand. Okay, go ahead, Matt.
Not to overcomplicate things.
Can you give us your name?
Sure. Yeah, Matt Eckel from Fletcher Tilton.
Thank you.
So part of the approval of almost a year ago was this compromise that you're seeing on the screen, because some of the windows that we believed were original were so damaged they could not be repaired. That's why we proposed kind of half new and half restored. I guess to take this one step further, and not to further complicate it, but at kind of significant expense, we had agreed to restore part of the windows. So if it's determined that they weren't original or not up to standard, I don't want to speak for Pedro and Joe, but it may not be worth preserving them if they're not even original to the building.
Good point.
Well, that's worth you coming back to us and talking to us about it. When you discover whether or not those windows you plan to restore are original or not. If it turns out they're not original and you would like to change your plan, you're welcome to come back to us. And we would be open to discussing that with you.
Okay. So just for process purpose, if we discover they're original and they are the 5/8, it can be remanded to staff for potential approval throughout all the windows. But if they're not original.
Well, staff will make a decision to either approve it or disapprove it or deny it, or to bring it back to the commission.
Okay, great. Just wanted to give that further context, and we'll certainly do our homework.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, and I would love to see that. I would love to see something I haven't seen before. So
yeah.
It would be very interesting to know the history.
I'll send lots of pictures.
Okay. So,
well, pictures, I understand. Would someone from staff want to come out and see the window to determine if
Oh,
they're
yeah.
original? Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we'll follow up with a site visit.
They love this. They love those site visits.
Yes,
It's a matter
that's
of-
great.
Especially if it's a
So,
nice spring day.
mhm.
I have
So
one more
I-
comment, John, and we don't have purview over it, but they said they're gonna do a wood window underneath that grate in the ground floor. I mean, if it's ground floor, wouldn't you want the moisture? Wouldn't it be nice to have a clad window that might be less maintenance?
That's not our purview. Let's not spend time.
I
Let's
know
not
that,
spend
but
time
that-
on it. We've got
I
other
prefaced it that,
We're allowed
applications
to do
behind
tonight.
us.
throwing an
Right.
idea.
So, I'm more interested in finding out if, we're ready for a motion.
John, before we go to a motion, I would like to ask a question. Which
Yep.
might affect my vote. And that is, what is the urgency to approve the plan for the deck at this point rather than approve a package of the deck with the mechanicals?
I could give you some reply to that. So we had and that's why Matt is on the call here. We had a meeting with the zoning board of approvals for the roof deck and the roof hatch, and that passed and was approved. So we're doing technical drawings that structurally include that, and we'll be submitting for permit shortly. Once we get our mechanicals essentially and structural. So it was approved by the zoning board.
Okay. I don't think that really answered my question, though.
No.
Meaning, what would prevent you from waiting for an approval from us until you know your mechanicals?
I think we commonly approve things in concept and phase things. You know, construction in the South End is particularly complicated. It's even more complicated now everywhere. And if this helps them build something and get a project done, they're the ones taking the risk. I'm very happy to help them by letting them know what we do allow.
Right, but in order to answer Peter's question, John, the applicant just needs to answer, what would keep you from waiting for an approval from us until you knew your mechanicals?
Okay.
Thank you, John. You were clear about that.
I'm just trying to think of the process where we have things moving forward right now. So we would be getting the mechanical engineer's designs. So we would have to expedite having a mock-up made rather than submitting for permit. We would have to get that up. We'd have to get on your agenda for review. So it just seems like it's adding time.
You
and
have to do that
complication.
anyway. Your mechanicals are not part of this application. You have to submit a separate application for the mechanicals. Anyway, so you have to do the mock-up and submit paperwork to us, no matter how this goes this evening.
But I thought, as we discussed, that if we approve the deck, we've approved lots of decks without mechanicals. We approve the deck, then they're going to design probably within those constraints of where that deck is. They don't want to rebuild the deck for their mechanicals. I mean,
They're not,
I think
on,
the
Chris- hang
difference
on, Chris.
is, I think the difference is, we know that when we approve decks without mechanicals, we don't know that there's going to be a forthcoming application for mechanicals.
On a staff level, I can just jump in here, and from what I'm hearing, and Sarah, you can jump in if you want. I think there's two pathways that the commissioners are discussing. So there's the approval with the provisos that, the deck be reconfigured to what we were just discussing. And then staff goes to look at the mock-ups. If there's minimal or no visibility that is interfering with the installation of the proposed mechanicals, then staff could take it from there, in addition to adding the proviso of the on-site visit and staff to do further research on the existing windows. The other sort of like pathway that I'm hearing from the commissioners is just to continue the roof deck portion of it until the applicants come with the entire proposed scope of work that will be on the roof deck, and that's including the mechanical. So hopefully, I mean, if I could refine that in a way that I think could provide two pathways for motions, I would be happy to clarify that more. But correct me if I'm wrong, any of the commissioners, but that's what I'm hearing with the two potential pathways.
I think that's very clear. I would say the first part would be my motion, if I make the motion. I think if we thought there was any reason that there might not be an approvable deck and mechanical system, then we would have a reason to hold it up. I don't think there's any, I think there's so many different ways they could do this that I think they're ultimately all approvable. So I'm not concerned. And like I said, it's their risk.
Mm-hmm.
And if I may, from our position, I just believe having some level of finality, you know, if the mechanicals are not viewable and we do live with the amended or the suggested alteration in the motion, that obviously minimizes coming back. There'll still be some level of review, obviously, but not potentially a full hearing. So I think just having that level of finality, to John's point and Chris's follow-up, is something that would mean a lot to the team. And then obviously we'll continue on this path and do whatever we have to do moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
My final comment, just adding on to a staff point of view, I know that there's been some concerns shared with the commissioners regarding like the configuration of the mechanicals and whether, you know, the applicant would be compelled to come back. Just so that, you know, within the permitting process, we would, if we are to sign off on any roof deck application through the permitting portal, we would be looking at those mechanicals. So let's say hypothetically, we see those mechanicals on a roof deck and that wasn't previously approved. We would handle that obviously and correct that course of action. But just to also convey that to the commissioners who are sharing that concern.
Okay. Thank you, Jackie.
And
so
also, I think you had a project that was on, you did have a project that was on earlier today that pointed out to the fact that this is one point on a cross street far away that you could possibly catch a view of the back of this. I just want to emphasize the insignificancy of that rather than it being in a prominent, you know, straight on view or a prominent alley view. It's a minimal impact, and we're trying to make it little to none.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Joseph. I think we understand the amount of visibility. So I'm ready for a motion, and I would encourage maybe John to make a motion if you're willing.
I'll make the motion, but the wording is exactly what Jackie said for the first part of that we approve it with the provisos that they submit an application for the mechanical within, I don't know, 60 days, 30 days. And what was the other thing in the
there's the
comments?
The windows.
Oh, and windows with 7/8" muttons.
Right.
Or that one window.
And just to be clear, your motion is to approve as proposed the roof deck with the proviso that the forward railing be moved back to align with the setback railing.
Yep. Correct.
Okay. Okay, so that's a motion. Do I hear a second? Was that Chris?
Yep.
Okay.
Just for clarity purposes, I really apologize to interrupt the motion, but does that include the potential for staff review for the mutton? Does that need to be listed in the?
Sure, we'll remand the preliminary review to staff.
And I agree with that.
Okay, great. So thank you, Matt, for asking for that clarification. So we will go to public comment before we take a vote. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at southendldc@boston.gov. And Sarah, do we have any raised hands or did we receive any written public comment?
We did not receive any written public comment, and I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, then we'll go to a vote. Catherine,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and the chair votes with the motion, so the motion carries. So thank you very much, and you'll carry forward with staff
Thank you.
from
Thank
this
you.
point.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody.
Thank you. We'll go to the next item on the agenda, which is 592A to 592 Tremont Street. And the proposed work is to remove an existing 4-panel wood door and replace with a new full view glass wood door.
Okay, Laura should be the applicant.
And you have staff comment
Yes.
for us?
Yep, so staff corresponded with the applicant regarding the increased use of glass in the proposed door design. The applicant explained that the replacement door is intended to serve as an entry to a newly renovated space. Staff also inquired whether any signage or vinyl lettering was proposed for the new door, and the applicant confirmed that the application does not include any signage or lettering. Staff recommends that this application be approved with the proviso that the replacement door be painted to match the adjacent door at 592 Tremont Street to maintain consistency with the building's design.
Great.
I'm trying to just share this. I don't really, I'm not really that familiar with this stuff.
Hi, Laura. I also have your
Hi.
presentation, so if you'd like, whatever you submitted, we will
Oh,
share.
you have it. Okay.
Yep. Before we
And-
do that, though, Sarah has some images that she wanted to share of the existing conditions of the property.
Yep, so
Okay.
this was the front door that Laura said that you were looking to replicate at the front. So this is just a front view of that.
Yeah.
So that's the existing style, and then the door is going to be on the left side of the building, on the side,
Oh, at the back,
the
on
back.
the left side,
It's
on the
not, yeah,
side
it's
street.
right over here on the side. I still
Laura,
didn't-
can you give us your full name too?
Oh, Laura Wyckoff. Oh, there it is. Thank you very much for putting those up for me. So this is the existing door and it faces on Upton Street. This door, it's a 4-panel wood door, but it's the type that's readily available from Home Depot or any particular lumber yard. I took a picture of the side jamb so you could see the wood and see that it's not the old wood. And it's been reinforced in several different places, but around the hinges, and there's wood across the top. It had been, the space had been occupied by the House of Siam, and it was a Thai restaurant, but they closed and it's no longer a Thai restaurant. It's a duplex space that's currently zoned as a retail space. I do not have any tenant or anybody that is planning on moving into the space right now. I've considered taking over it myself. I've also considered changing the occupancy and moving into the space. But in the meantime, the door, it's unsightly and I wanted to change it to be a full view door. I picked the full view door because it matched the one in the front of the building and it seemed, that's it, thank you. It seemed like the most logical thing to do, but I'm open to suggestions and feedback about the proposal. Like it made sense to me. If there's questions or if the commission wants to suggest that I look at some other resource or consider some other resource, I'm open to it.
Okay, thank you, Laura. And I think we can go to commissioner questions first. Catherine, do you have any questions?
Yes, Laura, is the glass you're proposing clear or frosted or?
Clear.
It's totally clear.
like the front door that in the store.
But the front door, that's a
That-
retail space.
Yes,
But the back, you're not sure it's going to be retail.
it's currently zoned retail. If I were to change it, it requires going to the Board of Appeals for a change of occupancy. So
I see, I see.
it's a bigger thing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Peter, any questions?
No questions.
Chris, any questions?
I do. My question is the glass, it is facing Upton. If it seems to me like it should be a more historical door put in that space. I know the front door, but that was for a restaurant, and that was a different thing. I think this might be a good thing to have it be back to a historical door.
It sounds like a comment
Sorry, it is.
rather than a question.
My question is, why isn't it a historical door? How about that?
Because it's not a historical opening, and putting a historical door there, to me, that would be more arbitrary. I can come up with a historical door and have a historical door made. I think you'd want to have some glass there, but it seemed to me to be more arbitrary to do that than to go with something that was more commonly seen at the street level.
It's not uncommon to have a historical door at the street level, Laura, but I get your point. Let's go to someone else for questions. Peter, any questions?
No, I think we go to John next.
Okay, yep. John?
Has anybody looked for any pictures or photographs that might show what the previous door was, or or do we know anything about when that opening was put into the building?
Well,
Sorry, Laura, I was able to look through the 1972 South End street survey photographs, and I did find a photograph of the building, and I didn't see an opening there. In 1972. Jackie, would you be able to pull that up?
Yeah. And then, Laura, while I'm pulling that up, you're more than welcome to share what you wanted to say.
I think that opening was part of, like, the opening is definitely not original because it's made with an angle. You could see the angle irons. And I think that it was part of original renovation that I was involved in like the early 90s. I guess I could dig up the pictures and try to find them, but I think I knew about that. That picture right there, you see there's no door, but there is one in the middle. There's a different spot.
That's
This
where
used to be the Upton Spa. You see underneath the billboard? There's a different
there are
door.
windows there now.
There's like a bump out bay window there now. Yeah.
No, right there is that. You see where it says Upton Spa painted?
Yeah.
That's a different opening.
There's a triple gang casement window or something there.
Yes.
It's a bump out a little bit with a little teeny roof
It
on
bumps out? Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
But there's no door to
No.
the far left.
Yeah.
Where the
That is a great
current door in question
No.
is.
And this photo was dated 1972. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, very helpful. Thank you, Sarah and Jackie. So, John, I think you were up asking questions.
That's my only question.
Okay. So I think we're ready for comments. This is an interesting one. And Catherine, what comments might you have?
Well,
on
it
this?
is interesting. I was looking at the line of windows that occurs above this, and in that historic photo, there were two. I think now there are three. Gosh, I don't know. I think it should have more than just clear glass in it. I agree with what Chris was saying. It doesn't seem appropriate, but I'll defer to other commissioners as far as the appropriateness of an all glass door there.
Let me comment. I have no problem not making it all glass. I'm not invested in an all glass door.
Ah,
I would, I think at least half glass, just because it's in that, like, if it is for a retail store, it's nice to be able to see inside. And just, I think it makes more sense, but I have no problem with
Okay,
looking more closely at doors that are, that have some glass, that aren't full glass doors, that are in the neighborhood.
Mhm.
I have no problem with that.
okay,
Yeah.
thanks, Laura, that helps a lot.
Yeah,
And
it
that'll
does.
help frame comments from other commissioners. But while you were up, Catherine, after hearing what Laura had to say, do you have any further comment?
No, I think that's, it's great that, Laura, that you're open to that, because I'm sure you could come up with something that incorporates some glass and is just not totally glass. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thanks.
I want things to be nice.
Of course.
Yeah, thanks, Laura.
That's,
Okay,
and
Laura,
I
Laura, hey,
appreciate
Laura,
the feedback.
Laura, that's
Yeah.
great. Could you leave us the floor for a moment? Thank you. We have to conduct our business. Peter, any comments?
I don't have a problem with what she has proposed. I think it actually adds to the consistency of the appearance of that street level. And I almost think that an alternative to that would be a solid door. I think a half glass door would be odd in that location.
Okay. And Chris,
So
any thoughts?
I started this off, so I'll just take it away. I think that the historical appropriate door would be appropriate here because it's street level. You see it all the time. And there's a lot of examples of a 4-panel door with the wood on the bottom and the 2 panels up at the top. Very typical in the South End. I think it brings the historical element back into it. It may not have been an original door, but it's an opening now, and I think we should treat it as such. I think it will complement the 3 windows with a little hood over them on the side of the building. So I think it pulls it back as it goes down towards Upton. So I think the compromise of, panel door with some glass in it is a good way to go.
Okay, interesting. John,
I agree with Chris. I think that it's a new opening. It's not really subject to our it's subject to our review, obviously. There isn't really a historic model for this because it's unique. I think a half glass door would be less subject to vandalism and accidents. That's pretty vulnerable in that location. And to back up a second, yes, I agree that the door that's there is clearly not original because the opening's not original and can be removed and it doesn't have to be duplicated. Myself, I would vote for the half glass door, like for the same reasons Chris said. But I think we could entertain whatever other commissioners felt strongly about.
so Chris mentioned going with a 4-panel door that would be not too dissimilar from the door that's currently there.
Oh, I missed the 4-panel. Sorry, I thought he said a single top glazed panel.
I
No.
said a 4-panel with two glasses. The upper panel's in glass with the
sorry, I missed that.
Right.
between them.
And I was thinking more in the line of kind of a storefront door where the bottom portion that's wood would not be at the halfway mark, but more like a third of the way up, which would match if there were a storefront here, a panelized wood base to the storefront with glass above. A little lower than that. That's not quite, that's more than a third. So but basically a single panelized base of the door in wood, somewhere around there, yeah, with glass above. At least the bottom of the door would be less vulnerable to those accidents that John suggested might happen. Because it's right on the sidewalk. The front door is less subject to that, even though I know it's at an angle and faces, you know, the side street sidewalk, but also is quite set back from the main street sidewalk. So anyway, that was my thought, like a single glass pane above a single panelized door base. That would be my comment for the door. I do think that while this door matches the front, it strikes me as an odd location for a full glass door. And I'm struggling with that one, especially since there isn't a storefront to accompany it. If the whole side street was a storefront, that would be different, but it's not.
What's behind it now? Did you say it was residential? Laura?
Its own retail store. That's
I think
that's what
back
this,
in the day. Sorry. Back in the day, I think this was the House of Siam kitchen door, right?
that's 100% correct.
But now it's going to be something else.
It could be.
It could be.
But it's not going to be a kitchen door.
And
No food.
just for context also, I'll tell you, I'm working with a client on Tremont Street that has a storefront that has one of those doors, as you explained, John, with the wood on the bottom and the glass on the top. And they're looking to make it something different because they feel vulnerable with just smash and grab. So they want something closer to a historical model.
Could we perhaps offer all these comments and then remand this to staff to work it out with Laura?
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking.
I think, yeah, just to comment, if we can get this remanded to staff and then within the motion include possible configurations and design, I think that staff would have enough to work with to get to a door that is better envisioned by the commission.
Cool. I'll make a motion to that effect.
Second.
Okay.
Just to make it clear, would this be an approval with provisos or?
Sure. Approval in concept so the door can be replaced with provisos that a configuration be worked out with staff that is less vulnerable and more appropriate to the opening, but does not have to be historic.
Seconded again.
Okay. We have a motion. It's been seconded. We can go to public comment before taking a vote. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at southendldc@boston.gov. And Sarah, do we have anybody raising their hand, or do we receive any written public comment?
We did not receive any written public comment, and I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, then we will go to a vote. Catherine?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And the chair votes with the motion, so the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. I appreciate your input and help.
Good luck.
Thank you.
So let's see. Oh, and then next item on the agenda is 587 Albany Street. The proposed work is to install Swiss pearl fiber cement material at the front facade. And there's an amendment to the application approved with proviso. Oh, this is an amendment to the application that was approved with provisos at the October 1st, 2024 hearing. Okay,
Great. And while the project representatives are raising their hand so they can be unmuted and have the potential to share their screen, I'm going to share the staff comment. So this application is an amendment to application 25.005 SE, which was approved with provisos at the October 1st, 2024 hearing. The applicant is proposing to change the previously approved terracotta material to a Swiss pearl fiber cement at the front facade. Staff has received and reviewed the sample that was found unacceptable internally, and we found that this proposed material does not resemble the terracotta material approved by the commission. Just for background, Commissioner Hunt and Commissioner Sanborn were able to come to check out the proposed samples, so I have them right here. Just for the commissioners to also look at the color sampling that they're proposing. And I can again show this to all of you when relevant and when requested. And then the staff recommendation is staff recommends continuance to allow for the applicant to explore and present alternative options that can replicate the originally approved terracotta material.
okay. And who will be presenting to us, Jackie?
Dan and Jacob are the project representatives. They could take it away if they'd like, share their screen.
And please give us your full names whenever you speak.
Sure. Hi, everyone. This is Jacob Simmons, City Realty Group. We're the property owners. I'll just quickly introduce and then I'll turn it over to Dan Artigas from Embark Studios. So as was mentioned, we were before this board and we were approved in October of 2024 for a design, which I think will be shown in a minute. The materials that were approved at the time, we're no longer able to source those. So we are coming back, trying to find a way to meet the design intent that was shown there with a readily available material. I'll turn it over to Dan. He can obviously go into much more detail, but just wanted to give a little background on the why.
Thanks, Jacob. Dan Artigas with Embark. We're the architect for the project. And I have a very short presentation just to reorient everyone to the site. We're located on Albany Street between East Canton and East Dedham Street, an area of a number of projects in the past couple years that have gone underway. And we're currently under construction on the site now. So this is the building that previously stood. Our site is right in the center here, the 3-story brick building. And there we go. And with previous working sessions with the board, we were our design was to, and is still, to reconstruct the facade in kind with what was there previously, and then have a 3-story addition that matches the cornice line with our neighbor at 595 Albany Street. The previous material was a terracotta panel that had striations on it, and I'll show that image in a moment here. And our intent with the Swiss pearl is to have a material that has those striations. And I think Jackie had those samples. Those 2 samples that you have are of the solid panels, and we're proposing to use both the solid panel as well as a panel that has striations. So in terms of the materials, obviously brick on the base of the building, stucco on the side in kind with our neighbor at the corner of East Canton and Albany Street. And then the 2 materials on the front face, the solid panel that you have the sample of to do the cornice, the sill, as well as our banding along the facade, and then this striated panel that has more of a texture and tactile quality to it that kind of breaks down the scaling of the facade as it goes up the building. So this is just a rendered elevation as well as an updated elevation, scaled elevation to the right, and then a comparison slide of the previous and proposed materials. So we wanted to show that we're matching the headers and the sills that were previously approved, as well as those cornice lines and horizontal banding lines, and then utilizing, and you can see here, this is the previously approved material, the terracotta panel that had those horizontal striations in it, and utilizing this fiber cement panel. And it's a high density fiber cement panel, different than some of the other fiber cements that you see on the market. It's a higher quality and at a different price point. So not trying to address this for cost issues, but the simple fact that this terracotta profile that we found is difficult to source from that manufacturer, and we've done quite a bit of research into other manufacturers which do not provide the same type of striation profile. So we did look at alternate terracotta, and I understand, and the staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but when we met with them, there was a concern about the sheen that you get with terracotta that wasn't visible on the Swiss Pearl panels. And we do understand that, but we wanted to try to break down the scale of the building. That's why we opted for this striated option. And this is just some of the details for the panel system. These sit on girts, very much like the terracotta, and they have options for concealed fasteners. So we wanted to match that concealed fastening system that we had with the terracotta. So I can go back to the comparison slide, but wanted to keep it short for the board, for the commission, and open it up to any questions and comments.
Great. So do we have questions? John, what questions might you have?
I'm not sure what questions I have. I actually ordered samples because I knew I couldn't get downtown, but they haven't come. I'm not sure I can judge, like I said, with a photograph on a Zoom call, what's the more appropriate panel. My guess is that the color is probably the most important thing, and that the striations that you're talking about, unless the intention is to make them look like brick joints, if the intention is more that they just be a texture, then there's probably more flexibility in the striations. But I want to be able to see it in person.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And if I just, our intent wasn't to kind of meet or simulate brick joints with the striations. It was really just to break down that scale.
That's fine. I think that's what we approved.
So I have.
Chris, I guess you want to go next.
I guess so.
Is somebody who saw the actual material?
I did.
I didn't.
Only Peter and I saw the actual stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Chris, may I ask them what they're to report on that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, go ahead.
As the de facto subcommittee?
Yes, yeah. Catherine, would you like to comment on what you saw?
Sure, and I also have questions. So what I saw, first of all, I would like the applicant to show what they proposed next in color, what we approved, and then what they're proposing now. Because in my head, it was, okay, something that looks red, the terracotta was red to match the existing building, and now you're proposing gray, is that correct?
No, that's not correct. So the approved was this gray color here.
Yeah, that was.
And this is the side by side. So this is the actual this is the color of
Okay,
the
then,
approved terracotta, and this is the proposed color.
Dan, what then is that image showing red on the addition? Can you flip back there? Yeah, what is that? No, not that. The next one. The next image that shows this. What was that?
This is the gray and the white. This is just rendered a little bit darker.
Well,
But this is the gray.
Yeah, that's misleading because it looks more red to me. I don't know, but
It looks a bit reddish.
yeah.
Dan.
And
Just be aware of
honestly, it
that.
looks more appropriate. I mean, I don't know why there's so much gray in the top. But anyway, back to the material. I saw the material. I did not care for it. I don't know why you would go from terracotta. I'm not buying the excuse that, oh, you can't source that. I mean, architects everywhere are using terracotta. I don't know what the problem is. So my question then, when you show these things, is it the idea that those thin panels, which is what we saw, would be overlaid each other to create that um, that sort of stepping effect? Because that's not at all what the material looks like. It's just a flat piece of something that looks not great.
Okay.
Catherine, were none of the pieces that you looked at grooved, like the one in the lower circle on the right?
Correct, they were not.
Okay. So Dan, you'll have to clear that up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the intent is to have the grooved panel, and that we had that, and the sourcing issue, to clarify, is that this grooved panel from this single terracotta manufacturer, we weren't able to find it from other manufacturers. There are, like you said, Catherine, a number of terracotta manufacturers, but those provided larger sized flat panels. So we wanted to maintain that grooved element of the facade. These terracotta panels would have joints periodically where they come together, and the same thing would happen with the Swiss pearl panel. You see the joint lines here.
So that would, Dan, create that sort of step effect that we see that gives it some sort of texture.
Well, and the panel itself, and unfortunately, we weren't able to get to Jackie the grooved panel sample, but they have individual grooves, and then this entire facade is stepped back from the front, so you have a 3.5 foot setback from the front brick facade for the addition.
Well, Dan, would you or would you not agree that the terracotta is a better quality material than this fiber cement?
In terms of longevity, this is a very high quality fiber cement product, and in terms of quality, they're comparable. But again, I said, there's differences in sheen and that ridged or grooved look.
And just to jump in here too, just to add more context for the commissioners, this is the original submission that was approved with provisos back in 2024. This just has an additional sort of image of the paneling of the originally proposed panel with the terracotta. So hope that can provide a little bit more context in what they mean with the paneling and the currently proposed paneling.
So Dan, when you use the term ridge, I think that's more helpful than grooved. I get a ridge, provides that sort of depth or step-like effect, right?
Yep. And that's rather than grooved.
Yeah. Okay.
Certainly. So these have ridges within the panels themselves, and that's something that we had with the original terracotta. You had this horizontal ridge in the panel itself.
I see. And so what we looked at, as you just said, that was down at Court Street is not indicative of this ridge effect. Because you couldn't.
No, it is not.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah, and we can get the ridged panel. We wanted to get that over for color.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Peter, you were the other one who went to look at the material. Any questions that you have about it, and what were your comments on looking at it?
Yeah, I do have a question before I make a comment. You described this as having striations. I'm not sure what you meant by striations, so if you can clarify that, because striations to me relate to the texture of the material, and the texture of the material was pretty uniform. So by striations, did you mean the rabbit
Yes, or the ridges.
or
Yeah.
the ridges? Yep.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, that's
Okay.
interesting, because I thought the flat piece actually had some lines in it. You agree,
No,
Pete?
that
Oh.
would be the rabbit or the ridge in it, which gives you, it doesn't change the color, but it gives that textural quality to the horizontal lines to the panels.
Yeah.
So for fellow commissioners, what we saw for samples were, I don't know, about a 2-inch by 5-inch block, a solid piece.
Yeah.
So we didn't see a larger piece.
And they're
that.
smooth.
Those for the banding,
both
the
smooth.
lintels and the sills.
And
Yes, the solid ones would be for the bandings, correct?
For the white banding. So the white is appropriate to the white. Okay.
so, Jackie, you had on your desk, though, something that had ridges. What was that?
Do you mean grooves when you keep saying ridges?
Well, I
Do
mean grooves, but
Are they
Catherine called
recessed
it ridges,
stick
so.
up?
No, what I have currently are just the solid fiber cement board. So to clarify, what I have is a sample of multiple colors of what is outlined in
Right.
white. What I do not have is a sample of what's outlined in gray.
Right.
I have a smooth version of the gray, but however, this does not have the ridges that is currently being proposed. I just have something that is more so reflecting the color of what they're proposing to use. However, I do have the actual sample that is being proposed to be used on the sills and the banding.
Which, fellow commissioners, was that sample and the proposed thing is very white. It's not even ochre. It's about as pure white as the background of this rendering here. So in contrast to the sample shown in the circle, it's very, very white. My concern, was it okay looking material? From a distance, it might be seen as terracotta. There was also comment about sheen. I was concerned that this might have a greater reflectivity than a actual terracotta would. But the samples are so small, it's really hard it was hard for me to picture how reflective it might be in an actual installation.
Well, I would agree with that, Peter. I thought it was pretty shiny. I'm just going to use the word shiny.
So we saw three, correct me if I'm wrong, Jackie, we saw 3 shades of gray. We saw white. And there were other colors up on your shelf, were there? Is that a different material?
I can bring it really quick.
No,
but
that's okay.
These are currently the proposed colors and materials. So like what they were saying, they want the sort of lighter gray. This is the graphite. And then this is the white. There are different, obviously, variations. I have different colors of the gray. This material also comes in like a reddish color, brown, yellow, green. So if that's something of interest for the commission to take a look at, I'm also happy to grab those samples as well.
Can I ask one more question? Does it come with a corner piece?
Not a closed corner piece. It would have a joint very similar to the the joints between the panels on the side, about a
I think that's something we would need. This is feeling to me like it needs a subcommittee.
I think it
Yeah,
needs a subcommittee and a continuance to a subcommittee, yes.
Yeah, I
And-
agree.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
and
because this is
people,
getting into the weeds.
yeah,
Because now I
people
want to
have,
know the deep corner details and the returns at the window details. And that, we're not going to get there tonight.
Right. I
No,
also
I
want to
think-
know if the panel comes in a thinner plank, because the terracotta panels on the left are shown in a much thinner plank than the planks being recommended on the right.
Well, they have two line spacings, one for the upper floor and then a different one for the lower 2 floors.
That's right. But they did not change the line
Right.
spacing on the right. It's
Right.
the same plank size.
And if I can, sorry, John.
Yeah. So go ahead, Dan.
Yep. On the left-hand side, the terracotta had ridges that were closer spaced. There were 2 panels, but the Swiss Pearl has a standard ridge or rabbet or groove.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm
Oh,
just
sorry.
looking at your drawing. If you just look at the spandrel between the windows, there are more planks in the spandrels on the left than there are on the right. I mean, it's an obvious change in plank size, regardless of the number of ridges or grooves that are on the inside of each plank, within the face of each plank. I'm just looking at the way you've drawn your grid.
Yes, but what's seen on the left, these are the ridge lines of this terracotta panel.
Yeah, but what's the
Up above
dimension
the
of that
tower.
panel from top to bottom?
It's about 1 foot, and then you would have either, so on the upper ones in that foot panel, you would have, let's say, 6 ridges versus 3 ridges in the panel on the lower elevation.
So we're only seeing the ridges on the left. We're not seeing the
Yes.
individual pieces.
No.
Okay. But you've not been able to match that on the right.
That's correct. Yeah. I was just trying to clarify that we had the option with this product that we can't source any longer to have different spacing of the ridges.
Okay. And would the individual pieces, I presume you've drawn individual pieces on the right.
Yes.
Is that correct? That have
Yes, because those would have the joints.
And are
in
those
them.
joints going to be as prominent in execution as they're shown in your elevation?
They're a little bit darker than they would be, but we can in subcommittee we can detail that out and how those spacing between those. The intent is that the joint gap is the same as this ridge or groove gap.
So the joint itself would look like another groove or ridge. Okay.
Yes.
I understand now. I think the problem may be more in the rendering than the material itself. But it sounds like a subcommittee is going to be the best way to go. And it sounds like seeing actual materials would be helpful, materials that show the grooves or ridges in the gray portion, because it's so difficult to just talk hypothetically about this. And then, I would just recommend to any subcommittee member that in subcommittee you also talk about a mock-up, because this is very difficult to envision. I'm very skeptical about the white material that Peter commented that it's bright white, and it just I'm afraid that it's going to look, I hate to use the word cheap, but that's what first comes to mind. Even though the material itself may not be inexpensive. So it needs to have some kind of texture, which the photograph has, and the material itself, as shown by Jackie on screen, does not look smooth and shiny. So I think subcommittee needs to really dive into that materiality. So I'm willing to take a motion at this point.
Well, before we do that, could I make a suggestion? I think we have to treat this just like we would a mock-up of materials on a construction site. And it has to be as many commissioners who can be there all together at the same location, looking at the material in the same way with the same people present. So if, I think it's beyond just a subcommittee of 2 people or something like that.
Well, yeah, I was suggesting that a subcommittee arrive at the point where materials have been narrowed down to a point where a mock-up can be made. And then your suggestion, Catherine, that the mock-up be viewed by the full commission is a good one.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
So I just want to make sure we did approve the drawing on the left originally.
did.
This was approved with provisos, yes.
Okay, that, and so I just wanted to make sure that if we knew materials better, would the commissioners approve the other side? I mean, it's the same window location, the same height, that same everything. We're just talking materials now.
It's a big just.
It's a big
Well, it's not a
just,
big-
yeah.
I don't think so, because if we approved this
Well-
terracotta panel that we hadn't seen before, and terracotta doesn't necessarily mean red or orange, it could be many earthy colors. I mean, if we saw the rendering on the right and we had a good understanding of the materials.
But we don't.
So Chris, just to
that's
let
the
you
problem.
know, Chris, just to
I mean,
let
I
you
agree
know.
we're going to go to the subcommittee, but seems to me like okay.
Just to let you know, Chris, yeah. So we brought this back specifically focusing on the materials, but the materials also funnel into the idea of spacing, sort of just the idea of dimensions of how that's going to look on the exterior facade. So it kind of ripples into more minute details, but it does circle back into the materials, but just those fine details as well.
And the joint, I want to make sure we are very clear. Different materials join in different ways, and different manufacturers make joints, and it makes a big difference on the corner and the window returns. If we're having to review this, we need to know all of that, and that's why Catherine is right. It needs a mock-up, a full mock-up, not just.
And I'd also say the color. I mean, my reaction, Jackie, I don't think I mentioned it to you, but my preference actually would have been to a different gray than the one that they were presenting. So.
And Catherine even mentioned that at the outset.
Yeah.
As well. So
We're
are we closer to making a motion?
I think the motion is simple. I make a motion to remand this to a subcommittee of.
Go ahead.
That's my motion. Who's on the subcommittee?
You are.
Not me. I'll come to see the mock-up.
Let's you and I do the subcommittee.
Well, yeah.
Do I have Chris aboard and then who else wants to volunteer?
Well, I'll volunteer, but I
I'm-
wish an architect would be on the subcommittee.
Right.
As an idea, and I think maybe this could be shared to the commissioners, we can have a subcommittee where we can work out the finer details that we've been discussing. And then to my understanding, I know that the full commission wants to take a look at it. So perhaps when we're at the stage where we're having these in-person mock-ups, this get, in whatever appropriate timeline, remanded to a full subcommittee with that intention. So the full commission can decide on it and be able to visit on site with staff if needed to see and ask questions with what was refined through the subcommittee.
Amendment accepted.
Again, yes. Oh,
So if that could ease, maybe, I know some of the commissioners are busy, so if that can ease the concerns of having, an architect on the subcommittee, then we can have someone from a different background.
And
I'm actually,
I mean, I can always, as the architect, if the subcommittee has a particular question or a particular meeting where I'm needed, I'm happy to make an effort to be there. I just can't commit to a full, what might be several in-person meetings.
Also,
if
I'm
it's
willing to be,
appropriate,
go ahead.
Jackie,
Please.
in this case, given the importance of it, would a subcommittee of 3 people, Chris, Catherine, and me, be appropriate?
We can have an alternate, to my understanding, that might have to be revised after the hearing, but and then Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but in other commissions, we have had an additional third person as an alternate, right?
I think so, yeah.
And John
Okay.
Amadeo, weren't you about to volunteer?
I was, but Peter beat me to it.
So I have Chris DeBoard, Peter Sanborn, and Catherine Hunt.
Is there any reason it can't be a 3-person subcommittee?
No,
Must it be 2 plus an alternate?
I thought,
we are having 3. So I
Oh,
think,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
and did John volunteer for a little bit of consult to
I'll
the?
be of
John
counsel.
Freeman did.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I
And
clarified that.
again, so I guess the way that I'm understanding this, and I could be corrected, but this is moving with the intention of having the subcommittee and then putting it back to the full commission. So eventually, let's say John Freeman and John Amadeo will be seeing this and providing feedback.
Well, I would like to ask John Amadeo if he'd like to take my place.
I was going to do the same thing.
I'm happy to.
I appreciate your confidence, Peter.
Okay, so I have John Amadeo stepping in for Catherine Hunt.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so
Peter
then,
Sanborn and Chris DeBoard.
all right. Thank you.
To the applicant, is it possible to get a larger sample?
Definitely, we will get a larger sample of both colors as in addition to alternate colors for
Right.
review by the commission and the
And
subcommission.
with the proposed grooves in them or ridges?
Yes,
however you-
correct.
Okay.
Yep. I apologize that we couldn't get the grooves or ridges in time, but we will, for subcommission, have that subcommittee.
Okay.
And then also for context and comparison, could we have a sample of the red brick from below?
Certainly.
Yeah, Dan, I'm gonna, once this motion is seconded and is voted, I will follow up with your team via email with
I'm gonna second.
everything that was discussed.
We have a motion. I don't know if it's been seconded. Has it?
I did. I just seconded it.
Chris just seconded.
Okay,
it.
great. Thank you. Then we can go to public comment. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at southendldc@boston.gov. And Sarah, any raised hands or written public comment?
We did not receive any written public comment, and I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, then we'll go to a vote. And Chris,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Catherine,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and the chair votes with the motion, so the motion carries. Thanks very much, Dan and company, and we'll carry on.
Thank you. We look forward to continuing it with the subcommission.
Sure. So now we will go to the next item on the agenda, which I think may be the last item in design review. 52 Plimpton Street. The proposed work is to demolish an existing building and build a new 7-story building.
Okay, Catriel, you've obviously been made co-host, but before you state your name and affiliation for the record, Our staff comment for this application is that this application has been through multiple advisory reviews with the commission and has had discussions on the material of the building, the accessibility ramp in relation to the entryway, the details about the proposed use of the building, details about the existing structure and historical significance of 52 Plimpton Street, and the proposed demolition plans. Staff recommends approval with the following provisos, remand the following to staff. A mechanical mock-up will be installed to determine visibility, a mock-up of the black metal railing at the roof to determine visibility, staff to be included in mock-up of the proposed brick siding on the site, and 75 to 80% completion of documents to be given to staff to review the details.
Okay. And when the applicant is ready to present, please give us your full name.
Yeah, Kelly, thank you, members of the commission. My name is Catriel Tullian. I am principal of Stack Architecture and architect of record for 52 Plimpton Street. And
Joshua, you've
I'm
also
going
been
to-
made co-host, so you're able to share your screen and unmute yourself.
You see my screen right now?
Yep.
Great. I'll just go quickly through the presentation and kind of show you a little bit where we have been in the last 3 advisory reviews. Just as a reminder, 52 Plimpton Street is located in the Albany-Harrison corridor in the protection area of the South End. It's a 7-story building, 44 residential units with 8 affordable live-work units on the ground floor reserved for artists. The project also has a public gallery, accessible to the public on the ground floor, designed to activate the street edge and contribute to the creative and cultural fabric of the neighborhood. The project has gone through BPDA small project review and has received approval by the Zoning Board of Appeal. A little bit of a review of where we have been. The first advisory review was on August 5 of last year, and we presented the project and we received the comments that we should reconfigure the ground floor and access of the ramp that initially was kind of wrapping around the gallery, that there should be an alignment between the windows on the upper portion and the ground floor, and that we should replace the proposed glass railings with metal railings. On October 7, we came back with a revised design where we reconfigured the ground floor to propose aligned apertures on the ground floor with the rest of the building. We relocated the entry ADA ramp to land at the same spot as the main entry for the general public into the building, and place the entry of the building switched with the gallery right into the corner of the project, adding this structural element that was required for lateral bracing. During that meeting, it was requested that we emphasize the verticality of the facade and gave some hierarchy to the rhythm and the apertures on the facade, and that we included a double door on the main entry of the building, which we did. On December 2nd, we proposed to alter the facade to create kind of like this frame around the balcony apertures on the facade, creating a hierarchy between the window apertures and the balconies, and adding this kind of vertical expression to the building. And the comments that we received were that the kind of like the spandrel elements between the brick apertures should be recessed and that the kind of like the coping terminus of the horizontal at the top of the masonry should be emphasized almost as a cap to that surface. Our proposed project that we're bringing today eliminates the masonry elements in front of the balconies, kind of increasing this vertical emphasis and hierarchy between the vertical apertures and the windows. We have increased the presence of the horizontal band at the top of the masonry with a black metal cap that kind of adjoining to the railing kind of provides a terminus to the brick material of the facade. And then we've changed the window proportions to a taller and narrower apertures to emphasize the vertical hierarchy of the project. Here is a comparative slide between where we were at the very beginning of the project on August 5 and on where we are currently on May 5th. You can see that, you know, there is a difference between the proportion of the elements. There is a hierarchy between the elements, and then there is an alignment between the windows all the way through the facade, as well as kind of a relief of the corner to allow for accessibility and general public to enter in the same point. A little bit of a detail for the facade, where we see right from the top the 8-inch metal fascia that we're proposing to cap the cover brick cladding of the main facade. A large kind of metal a railing, a guardrail to create kind of like emphasize a datum line at the top, serving as a expression of a cornice. The cover brick material, which is a masonry material that is applied as a shingle. Then the framing around the balconies, terminating the brick with a steel metal angle that is painted black. The balcony interior will be expressed with a wood cladding, the same as the fascia of the balcony surface, as well as the ceiling. The general materials of the facade, starting from the base with a granite base immediately below the art gallery. Same material will be utilized for the steps and the ramp into the main entry. We're proposing that the ceiling on this main entry, as well as the art gallery that is open to the public and expressing itself on the ground floor, would be wood. The main facade surface of the Plimpton side of the building would be of Peterson cover brick, which is this material that I'm describing. Is a masonry material that is applied as a shingles. And then the rest of the building will be following the same kind of shingle system and kind of lap siding pattern all the way around the building. And at the top will be fiber cement in the same lap siding and the same proportion pattern to follow the size and proportion of the brick shingle. And thank you. That is our presentation, and I open it to any questions or comments that you may have.
Great. Thank you very much, Catriel. So, yeah, so we'll go into questions. Peter, do you have any questions?
My questions are to staff and fellow commissioners. Do we expect to make one motion here or two separate votes, one for demolition and a second for design approval?
It could all just be included in one, to my understanding, if that's what the rest of the commission is.
We're demolishing a building? I think we have to do two, don't we?
We have to do
Oh,
two.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry.
And I think it might merit a review of what that building was.
Yeah.
Because we haven't seen that in this current presentation, even though I'm sure in the previous three advisories, we talked about it and you showed us.
Yes, I have it. I have it in this presentation on the appendix. If you like to take a quick review of it.
I think we should.
Absolutely. See, yes. So here are the existing structures. You can see to the lower left, the site plan shows the locations of the structures. So the 52 Plimpton and 56 Plimpton, 52 being a 3-story building, and 56 being a single-story building containing a garage. Both buildings show substantial wear and tear and signs of patching and several kind of like interventions throughout the years. The buildings are in great disrepair. This is a view from the back of it. Most of the windows are filled with CMU masonry. Here's an image of the back and the front.
I think we have the gist of it, and we talked before.
But doing due diligence, we need to look at it again so that we can make a motion.
Right, no, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Are we ready for a motion?
I am.
If there aren't any questions about the existing building, I think you can go ahead and make a motion, John.
Catherine, you want to make it?
Sure. I move to approve the demolition of the existing building at 52 Plimpton Street.
Second.
I actually think we have to do another motion or include in this motion whether we believe this building to be contributing to the district or not, because
yes,
that
you're
makes a
right.
difference to the level of review that we have purview over the new building.
You are correct.
You're speaking of the existing building being a contributing building or not?
Right.
think in the
If it is
first-
go ahead, John.
I think in the first advisory, we discussed it, and we decided because of its proportion, because of its street front, its massing, and probably the window configuration, that it was a contributing building. The garage, I think we said, was not a contributing building. At least that's the way I remember it. So
Mhm.
if there's demolition of the garage, or we can do them together and say that they are contributing buildings, and that therefore it kicks in full review of the proposed new building.
So
I'll make that amendment.
Yes, and accepted.
Okay. So we have a motion. It's been accepted. It's been seconded. So let's go to public comment. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at southendldc@boston.gov. And Sarah, do we have anybody raising their hand, or do we have any written public comment?
We did not receive any written public comment, and I don't see any hands raised.
Thank you, Sarah. So we'll go to a vote. Catherine?
Aye.
Peter?
Nay.
John?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. So 4-1, the motion carries. So we can move into now, I think, questions on the presentation of the proposed replacement building. So, Peter, do you have any questions on the proposed replacement?
I don't. Thank
Okay.
you.
Chris, questions?
I do not.
Okay. Catherine, questions?
No, thank you.
John,
No
questions?
questions.
I actually have some questions. First is the side that we can't quite see on the left side, but there's a gap there, some kind of drive or aisle separating it from the next building. What is the material on the return side, on that alley side or whatever that is?
Yes, so here you can see the cover brick returns, kind of creating a kind of a frame panel that is located and kind of like held by the lateral bracing. So it returns about 20 to 30 feet into it. I don't have the exact dimension.
But 2 window bays.
Yes.
Yep. And then the fiberboard
And then the fiber
continues the
cement.
rest of the way.
That's correct.
Yeah, yeah, that answers my question. Thank you very much. And my other question is, are the windows operable, and are they sliders or do they hop? Do they tilt out?
That's a good question. They will be operable. We haven't gotten to that detail yet, and we are willing to listen to the advice of the commission in that.
Okay. Oh, there's actually a third option, even casement, the way they're configured, but okay. So those are all my questions and they've been answered. So we can go to comments. Catherine, any comments?
Just that I think you've done a terrific job listening to all our comments through the reviews. And I think you have a great looking building here, which will definitely improve that little neighborhood there. So congratulations.
Great to hear. Thank you, Catherine.
So, okay. Peter, any comments?
Yes, despite my nay vote, I think this is a beautiful project. And I strongly encourage you to have operable windows and
thank you, Peter. Yes.
Basement, maybe. That's
Okay. Chris.
No comments. Great
Okay.
building.
Great. John?
I agree with the previous comments, and I thank you for your patience.
So I have some comments. First of all, I agree with everyone about how responsive you've been and how well you've actually responded to our comments. Not just responded, but responded with the kinds of improvements we were looking for. Thank you very much for all of that. I know that the staff comments listed a number of provisos, and I won't be able to remember them all, but some of the things that have been I've been curious about is how corners will be handled, how different materials will meet one another. Those are important details, and I don't know if that's something we as a commission want to remand to staff, or if we feel we need a subcommittee to look at those details. This is a completely new building. We spent a lot of time speaking about the last application that was a less complex building, and yet asked a lot of questions about similar things. And so I'm wondering if we need a subcommittee, or if this is something we can remand to staff for all of those details.
I May I respond to that?
Yeah, please, John.
I think in the very first meeting, we asked many of those questions about this new material. And I think there's only one building, unless there's been another one that's been built with this material in Boston or in the region so far. And I think from the beginning, we did want to see those things. And I agree 100% with you that we should see them. We should be included in mock-ups. I think in this approval, we've agreed to the material. But we do want to see how the corners work, how the returns to the windows, all the same things that we said previously.
Right.
And how it works with other. So if that's a presentation back to the whole commission or a subcommittee, I don't have a strong opinion. I would be willing to be on that subcommittee because I think it's down the road a little ways.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm already on another subcommittee, but I would also be willing to be on this one unless there's another volunteer.
I will do it.
Okay. So then I think we're ready for a motion.
Well, I move to approve the application as submitted. You want to make some provisos about remanding things to a subcommittee down the road?
I can read from the staff comments if you would like. I have it here.
Sure.
The staff recommends the following provisos, which I'm proposing be added to the motion. Remand to staff a mechanical mock-up. So to be installed to determine the visibility, a mock-up of the black metal railing at the roof to determine the visibility. And also I will change that to mean a staff and the subcommittee to include those things. And also a mock-up for the masonry siding. And also submission of 75 to 80% completion CDs for review of details, which is typical of what we ask for, not special
Absolutely.
to this project.
Accepted.
And John, are you also seconding?
I'll second it, yes.
Okay. So we have a motion and it's been seconded, so we can go to public comment now. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at southendldc@boston.gov. And Sarah, one last time, do we have anybody raising their hand or any written public comment?
We did not receive any written public comment, and I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, then we will go to a vote. Peter.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Catherine.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
And the chair votes with the motion, so the motion carries. So thank you very much, team. This is indeed a beautiful building, and I think it'll be a big contribution to the streetscape.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. You've been great help.
Yeah, and thank you for your collaborative work with the commission.
Yeah, absolutely.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Well, and folks, and hey, Josh Bryant here. I'm the developer. I will say that I think that the building has been dramatically improved by the collaboration here with the commission. So thank you for the very helpful and constructive feedback. I think it's better looking net building now than when it started.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
we're
great.
glad you think so.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now let's get
Yeah.
that built.
Yeah, exactly.
Indeed.
Okay. Thank you very much, and we'll proceed to the next item on the agenda, which is administrative review. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve administrative review?
I move to approve the administrative review.
I will second.
Okay, and we'll go right to a vote. Catherine?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
And the chair votes with the motion, so the motion carries. And I think we are on to staff updates, if I'm not mistaken.
There's an advisory.
Oh, an
Yeah.
advisory. That's right. I forgot.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to leave before. Are we done with all of our votes?
Yep. This is the next one, which is just advisory review, so obviously
Great.
non-binding.
I have somebody waiting for me, and I would like to leave if there's just the advisory to go. I think it's not that I don't like talking about Garden Gate. It's one of my favorite.
Okay.
Denied,
all
you
right
have
with
to
everybody.
stay.
Good night. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
John.
Great.
Okay. So this is 330 and 334 SHAWMUT Ave. The proposed work is at the front to install a new gate and ladder to lowered area for access to fire department connection. Okay. And has staff commented on this at all?
We have not commented on this. We
Okay.
typically don't provide, staff comments, but we can provide just sort of a background before. This application was first placed on design review for its originally proposed configuration of the fire department connection. The current configuration of it, we felt as if deviated a bit or deviated completely from what was allowable according to the standards and criteria. Luckily, 330 and 334 SHAWMUT's team has been able to work with us to find something that we feel will be much better and has a higher chance of getting approved. And so that is the sort of context going into it.
So are we also reviewing and approving fire department connections as well?
Nope. So that was approved administratively. The next part that we're specifically looking at is the new gate and ladder in order to access the fire department connection. And I will allow for the team to provide more context as to why exactly this is the case and how they intend to navigate this.
Okay, great.
Peter, you've been on, you can unmute yourself. You've been made co-host. Peter N.
And please give us your full name.
Peter Munkenbeck. I'm joined by Mayra Negron-Roche and Maureen Cavanaugh and Nina Schwarzschild, and I believe Michael Chavez is here, and perhaps one more team member. But in any case, I'll just do a brief orientation. These are two buildings that are basically adjacent, and they have a similar challenge, which is that they have basically about a 3-foot deep pit that is right behind the sidewalk that provides the light for fairly good-sized, sort of garden level front parlors. And so so that's one constraint. The second constraint was that the places that we could reach with a 4-inch pipe or a 6-inch pipe to come through the wall were very limited. We originally proposed, and the fire department approved, and I think it was considered consistent with the standards, to put a service connection essentially in the foyer. I don't know, you probably can't see my hand, but in the to the right hand side of the front door at approximately knee or waist level at the top of the stairs. It was at the top of the stairs coming out of the sidewall there, and the fire department later rejected that, having originally approved the plans. They subsequently rejected what they'd previously approved and said that connection would protrude too far into the pathway of entering and exiting the building in an emergency. And by the time they hooked up their hoses and things, that they would have been a significant obstruction. So they said they would not approve that. We searched everywhere else we could find. We finally found a place, which is to bring it out right under the second highest step. And I don't know if you have a different view than this plan view.
This was the only thing that was submitted to me. I think if your team can pull up maybe images of the existing conditions and perhaps what was previously approved to provide more context, or I can find what was previously approved. But if you can find existing conditions, or if you have photos of that.
Nina is sharing her screen at the moment.
I see. Okay.
So this is the area. I'm not sure how much of that photo you can see, but do you have another, there, okay. So you can see now that we brought the, we found a place that we could bring that connection out, which is basically below that second step there. And we found a place for the gong. But as you can see, there's a pit there. And everything else we proposed and had discussed involved things that were much more obtrusive. And there's a photo of one of them. You can see, if you can go back to that, the photo there's just that photo there. It's a little small on my screen, but do you see the that metal pipe that sort of starts at that? It starts at the where the pipe came out under the stair, and then turns and goes up so that it can be reached up just above the fence. And that was the one that was considered to violate the standards in a very obvious way. And so we went back to the drawing boards, and we tried about 15 different solutions. But what we're now coming to you with is the notion of just taking this picket fence that's along the back edge of the sidewalk there, and taking a portion of it and turning it into a gate at the same height, using the same pickets and everything, but just a couple of hinges and a latch, so that gate could be open. And then right behind it, not visible from this angle, would be I think a 4-step ship ladder, a steep but slightly sloped outward ladder that would be bolted to the back edge of this curbstone here, so that the gate would open. The fire person would holding onto the fence would turn 180 degrees and walk backwards down that ladder, and then they would be able to walk up to that connection without any of this hose showing. I don't know, Nina, if you can go back to the one that I don't know what else you have in the way of images here, so I'm a little bit.
Peter, is that pipe installed, or is that a rendering of a pipe?
This is a mock-up of what we did in order to show it to staff, and
So
staff's response was, unalloyed non-acceptance.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
And so what we're now proposing has nothing to, none of that outdoor metal, be it black or silver, is in the plan anymore. Just the protrusion from below the stair, which is the Siamese connection, or the fire connection itself. So
And what does that look like?
It'll be. We had an earlier picture of that. I don't know if you can call that up, Nina. We were looking at that a minute ago.
Doesn't protrude much further than the red fire gong, does it?
Yes, it's the same as the gong. Maybe it's another 3 inches or something. It's just enough to get a hose onto.
And it's brass.
And it could be brass. I'm not sure. I think it is. It has. The end connection is brass. I think there's a small amount of pipe that has to be pipe before you go to brass, but it is right there. I don't know, Nina, do you have a way of blowing that up or a better picture? I'm finding mine a little difficult to. We don't have the brass on it yet. So I don't think that's quite the finished condition. I think that there's because that turns down slightly.
Is there something installed that we're looking at? Because I'm just seeing a brick wall. What am I?
Nina, I don't know if you can point to. I'm looking, and maybe I've blown it up on my screen, but the bottom image on the screen at the moment, on the left behind the picket fence, you'll see that one remaining piece of silver metal there.
Yeah.
That's where the connection will be, and then you see the gong, and that's all that there will be, except for, as I said, a section of the fence converted to a gate, and then a ship's ladder that is bolted to the back side of that curbstone that you see below the fence, so that once you open the gate, you can step onto the ship's ladder, take 3 steps down or 4 steps down, and go over and deal with it.
And so just to, I guess, encapsulate, the hole has already been drilled for that, and you did the mock-up in the silver that came up over the fence.
Correct.
We can replace that with a simple nozzle for the firemen if we allow that fence to be cut, hinged, and a ship ladder.
That's the proposal.
Okay.
And I think if I'm
so is that metal elbow coming out of the brick wall there, or is that just a drawing of it?
I
That's a
believe
drain, that's a drain for the fire systems,
yeah,
and they want to clean it.
that's right. That's an existing piece of infrastructure, but I believe that gets replaced with what you said earlier, which is the normal brass fitting that the fire hose connects to.
Oh, I see. That's coming out and being replaced with the hose attachment.
Yes.
Can I clarify,
Okay.
Peter? Actually, that's going to remain there. The Siamese connection is going to be between the gong that you see there and that metal piece. There's a hole right there.
I'll say, so my error. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, right with the cross. Yeah, that exactly right there. That's where that's going to be connected. Yeah.
When was that hole created, and why?
That was the location of the mock-up.
Because we had to have something. We had to have some basis for the mock-up. We couldn't, we could have, sort of created it, I suppose, from Photoshop or something, but it wasn't very convincing. And I think we wanted, I think there was, if there wasn't a request, we volunteered that if we expected anybody to make a judgment about something, we had to create what it actually was, as opposed to just an image.
So a hole was drilled into the side wall?
Yes.
As part of making the mock-up?
Correct.
Okay.
And just another note, the fire protection room is there under that stair. There's a closet kind of for, in plan. It's going to be underneath that stair and a little bit beyond then, under that landing and that entryway there. And so our initial proposal was to have it come in the sidewall above at the landing, at the stair landing to the right of the door, because it's above the fire protection room. When the fire department said we had to put it on this wall, that would be the location, whether it was on the wall or up above, where it would have to come out through the fire protection room that's behind that wall there.
Yeah, I don't want to derail the discussion, but I want to know why a hole was drilled in that wall without approval from the commission. Did staff approve that?
No.
Staff, did you approve a hole being drilled into that wall?
We did not ask the staff.
Okay. Do you know you're not supposed to do that?
I doubt that anybody who did it knew that they weren't supposed to. I didn't know it until just now.
Okay. You should not be drilling anything into original brick without getting commission approval. So, I mean, I understand it's a small part of what we're talking about here, but it's important. So, we don't know that was going to be the ultimate location of this hose. So this attachment, anyway, you shouldn't ever do that again. That is, technically it's a violation.
Didn't the fire department say that had to come out there? Did I not understand that?
Yeah, but it wasn't approved. So even when there are proposed fire department locations, regardless, before installation, they are to get approval from South End Landmark District.
You can't override the fire department, right?
Sorry?
You can't override the fire department.
We can't, well, we can reconfigure typically with the fire department and in relevance with the South standards and criteria.
I agree with John. I agree with John, you shouldn't drill, but I thought the fire department had said that's where it needs to go.
We've worked before with there has been multiple applications where applicants have worked with the fire department to get a location with these connections in places that are acceptable.
Yeah, we've modified the original locations fire department have requested and they've accepted. So it's not, I mean, just for the sake of creating a mock-up, drilling a hole into the brick wall was not the right thing to do.
Agreed. I just see a lot of these fire connections right in the middle of the bow fronts on the bricks.
Exactly. And we've prevented that from happening a number of times since the ones that you've spotted. So anyway, I just want to point out, because it's our responsibility to point out that holes shouldn't be drilled into the wall without our approval. Anyway, so I think we need to see what kind of fitting is going in there. It's all well and good to say it's a fitting that you attach a hose to, but can we just see what it looks like?
Let's see if Michael can come up with that. I'm not sure whether he's got it at hand.
Are we talking about the
the FTC
connection? That one?
Yes. In other words, we've seen the drain, And what's being asked for now is the thing to which the fire hoses will connect that will supplement the water going into the building.
Okay, yeah, maybe in there. I think tonight's advisory review is more focused on the gate and the ladder, the FTC connection. But I think there might have been a photo of the mock-up that may have that brass connection that we were going to put on there.
Did we not hear, coming back to this point about drilling a hole in the wall, did we not hear that the staff had, at staff level, approved the location of the actual connection, and that this is only about the stair and the fence?
Correct.
Yes, that is the case, but I think the point that John Amadeo is bringing up is drilling the hole in general, and that's not allowed. But moving forward, I mean, that's understood by your team.
But if the location was already approved.
Do you have a design approval letter, Peter? Do you have a design approval letter?
I'm just going to interrupt really quick. The location of it was approved administratively in this hearing. That is something that internally we staff discussed with the team, that we would grant them the approval of that location for them to focus on the gate and the ladder. Now, again, for the commission's sake, if there is something to change, if this is a design that isn't acceptable, or if this is something that has to change with the fire department, then they would have to come back to the drawing board in general, right? But this is a sort of two-step process that they're approaching this at, where they were here with the intention of understanding that this has already been a previously approved fire department connection, which was approved at this hearing administratively based on their location, which was compliant. Obviously, that's excluding what was drilled already in the wall as a part of that mock-up. But now part of their pending approval with the fire department is the proposed gate and the stairs.
Okay. So we really should be focusing on the gate and the ladder.
Yes.
Right, and we should apologize for drilling the hole, but the misunderstanding was that we thought, we didn't understand that if there are any more steps, we didn't understand what they were before we could go ahead and install the actual connection.
Okay, which hasn't yet been installed, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, Jackie, have you seen the fitting that's going in there?
It was shared with us on a staff meeting with them.
Okay, and you are okay with that?
Yeah, staff saw it acceptable.
Okay, that's all we need to know. That's great, thank you. So I'm sorry, I kind of derailed that for a while, but I felt like we needed to sort that out. I was confused. Let's talk about the gate and the ladder. This is an unusual request, but I think there's merit to discuss. So, Catherine, would you like to say anything about that?
No, I would not.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm listening carefully. I just trying to absorb all of this. Thank you.
Peter, do you have any reaction to the proposed gate and ship ladder?
I'm having trouble really seeing the plans. It looks like the gate is proposed at the far right side of the property. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Right,
no other questions.
Right in front of the ship's ladder.
And while, just to further acquaint the commissioners, we did meet with the applicants to discuss this internally and thought it would be the best direction to bring it to an advisory review, because we do understand that this is a little atypical, but we're also trying to take into consideration what the fire department is relaying to the applicants. To our understanding, the fence and that gate that is going to be a part of the fence is going to be in par in the same design as what we see here within the drawings. In addition to, we've tried to, and I think we're at the understanding between the applicants that this proposed fence or this proposed ladder is to be placed in a way where it's really minimally visible when you're walking from a sidewalk. So hopefully that can add more context to the commissioners while they're absorbing everything.
So I do have another question, and that is, what's the height difference from the sidewalk surface to the concrete pad in the front yard?
It's on the order of 30 inches, but if you add the curbstone on which the fence sits and over which we would expect the fireman to step, it's more like 36 inches.
Okay. Can I see a photo of the front again of the building that will show the basement windows?
Yeah.
That's all I have for questions, John.
Are you doing that, Michael?
I think Nina's screen sharing.
Nina, is that you?
Nope, I'm screen sharing.
Okay. So if you have a photo, Jacqueline, that'd be great, but if not.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up right now.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
Yes,
All right, let's. Okay.
There it is, that's good. Oh.
Here are the existing conditions, and if the applicants can, again, these are two different addresses, right? So if the applicants can provide clarity as to which address this one is, so we can also then maybe focus our conversation onto the next one and the existing conditions of that one.
This is, I think, 34, isn't it, Michael?
Correct, it is.
334.
And just for some additional clarity, so there we have a 334 SHAWMUT Ave, and then just a kind of a building down there. There's 328-330. Those two buildings are sharing the same fire department connection, and they have the exact same condition as this one, where the connection to the FTC connection is going to be on the same sidewall of the stair. So when you see the photos, they look pretty similar to each other because it's the same condition. So the gate will be the same in both conditions, the stair will be the same in both conditions, and the pit is the same in both conditions as well.
Does that answer your question, Peter?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And that brass connection there, just for you, that's the one that we're putting on the wall.
Okay.
And is it Siamese like that?
It is.
Okay. So, okay. So, this is advisory. We can be a little more informal about comments and questions. So go ahead, Chris.
I thought we were moving on. I just said that I think the gate in that fence would be very appropriate. I think it'd almost be invisible. My comment would be that those firemen's stairs, that they'd be, if you could get them black, I think they would disappear better than that silver that I saw. So yeah, and right there in the corner, they should disappear.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Any other thoughts, Peter or Catherine? I've got some thoughts and I'm happy to add them.
Yeah, why don't you add your thoughts?
Okay. So just for benefit of the applicants, so you know what you're asking of the commission, our regulations do not allow us to put gates into front gardens. But this is a different kind of condition. The place where people generally put gates in their front gardens is to is to prevent people from walking up a pathway to a door that's under the stoop. And in those conditions, historically, there were no gates. The garden was surrounded by a cast iron rail, and the cast iron rail did not continue across as a gate to block access to the door under the stoop. However, this is a completely different kind of condition. And I think the gate intended here is to be as invisible as possible and to just simply blend into the existing rail, and it's not really preventing access that anyone currently has. So I'm inclined to say it's approvable. We're not approving anything tonight. This is just advisory, but we have to tell the applicant what we think is approvable and what isn't approvable. And I think in this instance, and I'm just shocked at my own admission of this, that I think this is approvable.
You're not the only one who's shocked.
Yeah. And I do agree with Chris that the ship ladder would need to be black. It couldn't possibly be anything else but black. But I don't think this is the same kind of gate that we would normally say is not approvable. It's not blocking access that anyone currently has. So because of that, I would see that it is approvable.
And hopefully
So-
it'll never be used for fireman's access.
Yeah,
And it's-
hopefully it never has to be used. You're right.
Right, and it's not starting any sort of precedent, right?
Right. No, I don't think so.
And
Um,
if that's a concern of the commission, you know, when this does come for design review, that can be made within the motion and be included within the discussions.
Good point, Jackie.
that this is a unique condition and it's a response to a unique condition.
Mhm.
So yeah, so this is, if there is, I don't know, is there any further discussion or guidance we feel we need to give the applicant before they come to us with an application?
Well, I have a thought that I'd like to at least present, and it's probably not feasible, but I think the gate is acceptable under the conditions. I wonder if there's an alternative to the ship ladder. It may or may not be possible. And that would be to, given that the whole yard is concrete now, to either on the, where the access will be, either to raise this up so you can make the step and either step down or ramp down. I don't know if there's the space to be able to do that, and the commission may feel that's more of a visual intrusion than the ship's ladder, but I just see the ship ladder as being quite a visual intrusion.
If I could respond a bit, would that be okay, Mr. Chair?
Actually, before you do, but,
Yes.
and I'll allow your response, I want to ask Jackie, you've been out to the site with the applicant?
We haven't been on site with the applicant, but Sarah and I separately stopped by to assess
Oh,
the conditions.
And was there a mock-up of the ship ladder in place when you
No.
were out there?
We have no mock-ups, but that's something that we could certainly request, of course, for it not to be installed or anything like that permanently. But to add on to Peter's comment, if I may, just for further context, when we met with the applicants virtually, we did discuss the feasibility and the possibility of adding and continuing on with those concrete stairs, that sort of configuration. There were some difficulties in regard to the design, and I think we discussed regarding how visible those steps would be in comparison to these ladders. So that was something that was considered. But if this is a route or an option that the commission would like to see when they inevitably do come for design review, that's something that we could follow up on.
So,
Well, if I read John's body language, I don't think he thought it was a very good idea, but
no.
Granite steps would extend much further than the ship's ladder into the space because they would have to be
Yeah.
steps.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that was sort of our staff feedback as well with the stairs, is that it would just be a little bit more visible, and I think that just the steps and the grade of it would have to be
Right.
I
configured.
think also context for you, I think in his presentation, this is why I saw it, but so there was a model of the Granger ship ladder there,
Yeah.
and you just might show that up on the screen just so that we know how far it comes back from that
Yeah.
wall.
Can
Right.
you do that?
Or a
Measurement.
cross section.
Yeah.
a
Yeah, we
cross
have-
section through that wall that shows
I
the
think
angle
on
of the
this
ship's ladder.
presentation too, we could see it, that, you know, because I think it might.
Hey, Chris?
Yeah.
When I'm speaking, I'd like you not to cut me off.
Oh, sorry, so sorry.
That's all right.
Same thing, sure.
So, yeah, if you had a cross section of the wall that showed the angle of the ship's ladder, that would be helpful. Dimension, so we know how far it comes out from the wall. I know Chris was trying to say the same thing, and we were both trying to say the same thing at the same time.
In the presentation that we just saw.
I saw it in plan. I didn't see a cross section unless I missed it.
Could we call it up?
Yeah,
The
I must
ladder?
have missed it. I'm sorry.
No, the ladder, the cut sheet from the ladder company.
Yeah.
Oh, that I don't have.
No, I think that Michael has it, or Nina.
Yeah.
It was submitted as a supplemental documentation, Jacqueline, or I can share. It was in the supplemental documentation.
Okay, I have it right here. Yep.
Thank you.
And while that's being brought up too, I get your point. We want to have the two combined essentially. So we will have it in the, final submission, we'll have a architectural cut through the wall that shows the ship's ladder and its related dimensions as it's attached to the wall, etc.
Okay, that looks like a set of metal stairs to me and not a ship's ladder.
It does.
That's why we need to see these things. I thought you were just talking about 3 or 4 rungs made out of pipe that you step down. That looks like a set of stairs.
I agree. And the one that I saw was, and I don't know whether you can see it elsewhere in here, but is steeper than that.
Yeah, that's not the one I saw either, but.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether that's even the right one.
Okay, sorry.
Well,
Maybe
then
there was another file.
It's a different
Yeah.
file, that's not it.
And now you know that what our concerns are, you can maybe find one of those.
Yes, we're talking about a ship's ladder that would be probably a 65, 70 degree, no, not straight up.
Right,
These are firemen in a hurry. We want them to have a good solid place for each foot, but quite steeply down.
Yeah.
Will there be a need for a railing?
No, because they'll be right next to the fence and the solid part of the fence. They can put one hand on that fence. It's only 36 inches down. So, if they hold the middle of that fence picket, it will be when they hit the ground, it'll just be right in front of them there. They're not going down. Remember, the height of the top of the curb is only a little over waist high.
Are you certain of that answer?
Yes.
Have you reviewed this with the fire department?
Yes. We presented this to the fire department, and the conclusion that I came away from the joint conversation with staff was that this was the most unobtrusive solution that we could think of and the least visible from the street. And we were praying that the fire department would be okay with it. Because otherwise we thought we would get stuck with a 3x3 landing and then another 3 or 4 feet of stairs, and it would frankly fill the whole well.
Right. Far more obtrusive.
Yeah.
So for your final application, you need to have all of that together to present to the commission. And because you may have a different configuration of commissioners when you come for an application, there are commissioners who are not here currently, and there are commissioners who are here now that might not be here when you come back. So in order for you to have a compelling, approvable application, I think you need to have your cut sheets exactly as you intend, and also a measured drawing cross-section showing what that set of steps looks like coming off of the inside of the garden wall. And its relationship to the gate and rail that's there and the curb that's there and the sidewalk, the public sidewalk on the outside of it. So, and I would suggest to you also that there be a mock-up in place that commissioners can review of whether product or fabricated set of steps you intend to put there would look like, whether it's out of wood or out of any other material, temporary.
We would purchase it. It's not a big item. We would purchase it and place it there. We wouldn't attach it.
Okay. however you wish to proceed with a mock-up, sure. And
not cut the fence. That we could leave to the imagination, right?
right, for a mock-up, yes.
Yeah.
No. I think any other guidance, Peter or Catherine or Chris, that you would like to leave with the applicant?
I have a question, John.
Yeah.
The hole that was prematurely drilled into the wall, is that likely to be used eventually, or does it have to be
that is the approved location for that brass Siamese connection.
Okay, so it's not something that has to be repaired.
I hope not.
In other words, it was just drilled prematurely, but luckily that location has been approved administratively.
Good, thank you.
So, any other guidance we need to leave with them? If not, I think we can wish them luck and say we'll see you when you're ready for an application.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll follow up, staff, Sarah and I will follow up with you guys regarding what was requested and feedback, just a summary of it, so you guys can move forward.
Perfect.
All right.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thanks for your time and your input.
Sure. And I think the last item on the agenda is staff updates. Is that right?
That is right.
And do you have any for us?
None that I can really think of. Sarah, do you have anything in mind, or?
Yeah, Rachel will be returning from leave.
Oh, she had her baby.
She did. And don't keep us in suspense.
We'll let you guys, we'll let her tell you all.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I saw a picture.
Um,
She'll
No
be
fair.
she'll be
Well,
returning from
if you
leave.
had gone, sorry, if you had gone down to look at that material,
Oh,
that's where I was with Gabby. She showed me on the sly a couple photos.
Yeah.
great.
yeah, but
She'll be back.
she'll be back. Yeah.
It's been great serving as the interim planner for the South End. I've learned so much. And Jackie's been a great help alongside. So yeah.
Sarah's still gonna be with us though.
I was gonna say, Sarah, you don't just
Sarah's not
disappear.
going anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere, but
I just want to say, Sarah and Jackie, with Rachel's departure, we didn't even skip a beat.
Yeah.
Helping
Great
us.
job, ladies.
We didn't skip a beat. I mean, you just jumped right in, and gosh, you didn't need any coaching from us. That's for sure.
Well, thank you all. It means a lot.
Yeah.
And again, happy to continue seeing you guys monthly.
Yeah.
And more for especially those who are serving in subcommittees. I'm, excited to work and get some projects moving. So, but yeah, I think that's the only staff update we have. My other one was following up. I know last hearing there was discussions as to an event that was supposed to happen back a couple of years back regarding safety concerns within the South End, almost a working group.
Yes.
And I know that the commission has requested that we report back on that. When I came back in office, I followed up. I haven't heard anything yet with any continuance of that or just really any word. So when I do hear something, I will reach back out to you all in regards to sort of what that process is, if it is moving, what that's going to look like. But just at least wanted to provide an update that we did inquire about it. So
yeah, thank you, Jackie. It
Of
would be great
course.
if they would, get that going, because it's a miracle we didn't hear that tonight, but it's all about security and,
Yeah.
Jackie, that reminds me that Joe reached out to me and asked me to contact him to set up a conversation between just him and me to bring to the rest of the commission about policy.
Yep.
And I have not gotten back to him, mostly because in the last 2 weeks,
I know you've been out sick.
I've been really, really under the weather.
Sorry to hear that, Joe.
Yeah, the
Hope you're
last
feeling
couple
better.
of days I've rallied finally, but I had laryngitis, I had conjunctivitis, I had a really bad virus, chest virus, and went to the doctor. I got meds. They said I'm going to live. But
Thank God.
but I was skeptical at the time that I went to the doctor.
Wow.
I mean, I felt really, really bad. It's as bad as I've felt in a long time. And all it was, they said, all you have is a common virus. I was like, I don't want it again. And I actually worked I go to the office for my job, and I actually work from home for the last 2 weeks because I couldn't be around people. It was really bad. So anyway, I missed I didn't miss his email, but I missed getting back to him. So I just wanted to let you know, Jackie, that I plan to respond to him.
I'll let him know that you're intending to do that. But
right.
Other than that, we don't have anything else.
Okay.
All
Other
right.
than we have some good violation spotters amongst us.
Well, that went nowhere. I didn't realize it's the protection area.
Well,
okay.
we'll continue
whatever.
moving. Yeah. Again,
Yeah.
if anyone sees violations, as always, this goes with whether commissioner, constituent, passerby. The typical protocol is they email us, and either we or they will submit a violation, and we'll take a look at it and let them know typically what it results to be. But
That's
okay.
great.
So
Motion to adjourn from anyone?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Do we have a second? All in favor, voice vote?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, we're adjourned.
all right.
Good night, everybody.
See you
Bye,
next time.
everyone.
much,
Have a good one.
Jackie.
Thanks.
See you next time.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank you.
Jackie and Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Jackie.
Bye.